On my 63rd birthday, my daughter gave me a beautiful smartwatch. It tracked everything, my heart rate, my sleep, every step I took. I thought it was just a thoughtful gift. Until the day I couldn't find it. I called her, and her voice suddenly turned urgent. "Dad, listen to me. Don't look for it. You need to get out of there. Now." I didn't understand why, but I trusted her. When I met her, she showed me what she had recorded from that watch. The truth made my blood run cold. That was the moment I realized I had never been safe, not even inside my own home. I'm glad you're here. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Your presence really matters. Quick note, some details in this story have been adjusted for storytelling purposes. What truly matters is the message it carries. At 63, standing in my wheat field on the first evening of retirement, I believed the hardest work of my life was behind me. The September sun hung low over the Powder River Basin, turning the wheat gold against the darkening blue of the Bighorn Mountains. 162 years of Hewitt blood in this soil. Great-grandfather broke the land in 1862. Grandfather expanded it. Father preserved it through drought and depression, and now me. 240 acres of Wyoming stubborn enough to outlast 4 generations. The westerly wind carried the smell of approaching autumn, and something closer charcoal smoke from the backyard where Lorraine was setting up my birthday barbecue. 63 years old today. First day of retirement from the County Agricultural Extension Office. The kind of milestone that should feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning, but I didn't yet know of what. "Will family's here." Lorraine. My wife of 40 years called from the backyard with something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not urgency exactly. Something sharper, like a bell struck wrong. I walked back through the wheat boots, crunching on the dry stalks, and found the yard transformed. Yellow balloons tied to the old oak table plates stacked beside a chocolate cake with too many candles, and the grill smoking with ribeyes I could smell from 20 yards out. The border collie Roy sprinted past me, chasing a laugh. 8-year-old Finn, my grandson, with his mother's dark hair and his father's restless energy, was the source of that laugh. He grabbed Roy's collar and nearly fell over, grinning. "Grandpa, Mom says you're old now." "Ancient," I said, ruffling his hair as he squirmed away. "Sterling." My 30-year-old son stood by the grill, adjusting his tie, even on a Sunday, always the real estate man. He'd driven down from Casper for this, left his Coldwell Banker office on a weekend, which meant Lorraine had insisted. "Happy birthday, Dad," he said, shaking my hand instead of hugging. Professional even here. Paloma, my daughter-in-law of 5 years, 29, and always quiet at family gatherings, stood near the cake table with her hands folded. "We brought Wyoming cider," she said softly, gesturing to the bottles sweating in the ice bucket. "The kind you like." "Appreciate it." I meant it. Paloma was thoughtful in ways Sterling never noticed. Then the screen door banged, and Alara walked out carrying a small wrapped box, and the whole yard seemed to sharpen into focus. My youngest daughter, Ilara, 28, and sharp as they come, had driven back from Casper with a gift I didn't yet know would save my life. "Happy birthday, old man," she said, kissing my cheek and pressing the box into my hands. "Open it now." Inside was a smartwatch, sleek black face, and leather band, the kind that cost serious money. I knew because I'd looked at them in the Casper Best Buy last month and walked away at the price tag. "Ilara, this is $1,800 and worth every penny," she interrupted. "Dad, this'll keep you safe. You can track your heart rate steps, even has fall detection. You're retired now, you'll be working this farm alone more. Humor me." I strapped it on. The screen lit up, showing my pulse 72 beats per minute. Steady, calm, unaware. "Don't trust gadgets that measure feelings instead of human intuition, William." Lorraine's voice cut through the moment. She was smiling, holding a platter of grilled corn, but her eyes weren't smiling. They were fixed on the watch on my wrist with something I couldn't name. Not anger, not fear, calculation maybe. The table went quiet for half a heartbeat, then Sterling laughed it off. "Mom's still got her flip phone, Dad. Don't expect her to appreciate tech." But I'd heard that tone. 40 years of marriage, and I'd never heard that tone before. I should have paid attention to that moment, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes when she looked at that watch. We ate ribeye and corn and cake while Finn told stories about second grade and Roy begged under the table. Sterling talked about a commercial property deal closing in Casper. Ilara asked about the wheat yield this year, actually interested, actually listening. Paloma was quiet, picking at her plate. Lorraine laughed at the right moments and refilled drinks and said all the correct things, but twice I caught her glancing at my wrist where the smartwatch sat, counting my heartbeats. By 9 o'clock, the family had left Sterling and Paloma back to their house in town, Ilara to her apartment in Casper, Finn waving from the back seat until the taillights disappeared down the gravel road. Lorraine and I cleaned up the backyard in the comfortable silence of 4 decades together, except it didn't feel comfortable tonight. It felt like waiting. "You should wear it to bed," she said, stacking plates. "Alara spent a fortune." "I will. She's always worrying about her old man." Lorraine didn't answer. I sat on the pine porch alone with a small glass of whiskey while the Wyoming stars came out cold and bright above the bighorns. Retirement jitters, I told myself. Nerves about too much time and not enough purpose. Normal. But how do you know when a 40-year marriage has turned into a trap? I went to bed at 11:30. The house dark and quiet. Lorraine already asleep on her side of the big pine bed we'd bought in 1986. I kept the smartwatch on because Alara had asked me to, because she'd spent $1,800 she probably couldn't afford because she was my daughter and she worried. At 11:47 p.m. the watch vibrated against my wrist. I lifted my arm in the darkness. The screen glowed blue-white, showing a text message from a number with no caller ID, no area code, nothing but 10 digits I didn't recognize. 2 words, "Be careful." I stared at the message. Be careful. Be careful of what? Lorraine's breathing beside me was steady, deep, undisturbed. I could wake her, show her, ask if she'd gotten a strange message too. But something stopped me. Some instinct I didn't yet understand said don't. I deleted the message. Spam, I thought. Had to be spam. Nobody had this number yet except Alara, and she'd set the watch up herself this afternoon. I put my arm down and closed my eyes and told myself it meant nothing. That was my first mistake. The second was not understanding that the watch on my wrist wasn't a gift. It was a lifeline someone knew I'd need. I didn't sleep after deleting that message. 2 words on a glowing screen, "Be careful," and suddenly the whole evening replayed in my head like evidence I'd missed the first time. The first crack appeared at 7 o'clock, right between the cake and the candles, when my wife said something I should have understood. "Don't trust gadgets that measure feelings instead of human intuition, William. A man knows his own body better than some circuit board." I'd laughed it off. We'd all laughed it off. But lying here in the dark at midnight with Lorraine's too steady breathing beside me, I remembered what I hadn't noticed then. Sterling and Paloma had exchanged a glance. Quick, barely there, but I'd spent 40 years reading cattle auctions and county board meetings. I knew a signal when I saw one. Sterling had jumped in immediately. "Mom's got a point. All this tech tracking is a bit much." Alara's smile had frozen for half a second. I'd thought it was sibling rivalry Sterling always had to contradict her. But now, sleepless and replaying every word, I wondered if my daughter had caught something I'd missed. The smartwatch sat heavy on my wrist, its silent sensors tracking my heart rate in the darkness. 78 beats per minute. Elevated. The thing knew I was awake, even if Lorraine was pretending not to. I turned my head slightly on the pillow. She lay on her side, facing away from me, breathing deep and even. Too perfect. The kind of breathing you perform when you're trying to convince someone you're asleep. "Lorraine," I whispered. Nothing. The breathing continued metronomic. I closed my eyes and went back further through the evening. After the family left at 9, we'd washed dishes together at the kitchen sink, 40 years of Sunday ritual passing plates in comfortable silence. Except tonight, the silence hadn't been comfortable. She'd glanced at my wrist 3 times while I scrubbed the grill pan soap suds running over the watch band. "You'll take that thing off before bed, won't you? Can't be comfortable sleeping with it." Alara says it tracks sleep quality. Might be interesting. Interesting, right. That tone again. Flat, dismissive. Like the word interesting meant something else entirely in a language I didn't speak. I know now what I didn't know then. A marriage can rot from the inside while the outside still looks perfect. 40 years of shared meals and shared bed, and I'd never once questioned whether the woman beside me wanted me alive or dead. After the dishes, I'd sat on the porch with whiskey while she went to bed early. The Wyoming sky had been brilliant with stars, the Milky Way, a river of light over the bighorns. I'd sat there for an hour thinking about retirement, about time, about the 162 years of Hewitt blood in this soil. I'd met Lorraine at Buffalo High School homecoming in 1980. She'd been wearing a blue dress and standing under the gym's flickering fluorescent lights. And when she'd smiled at me, I'd thought, that's the one. We'd married in 1984, built this life together on land my great-grandfather had broken. 15,000 sunsets from that porch. Same woman, same land, same life. Or so I'd thought. But tonight on that porch, nursing the whiskey, I'd felt something wrong in the air. The September wind had carried the smell of wheat and coming autumn and wood smoke from someone burning brush in the distance. Normal. Everything normal. Except the watch on my wrist had felt heavier than it should, like Alara had strapped a warning to my arm instead of a gift. I'd told myself I was 63 years old, too old to start imagining problems where none existed. Retirement jitters, nerves about empty hours and empty purpose. Now, lying in the dark, listening to Lorraine's performance of sleep, I understood the problems weren't imagined. They were real, and they'd been growing under my feet while I'd stood in golden wheat fields believing I knew my life. I thought about getting up, maybe making coffee, sitting at the kitchen table until dawn, but something kept me still. Some animal instinct said, "Don't move. Don't let her know you're awake. Don't let her know you're thinking." The smartwatch glowed faintly if I tilted my wrist. 12:17 a.m., September 2nd now. My first day of retirement had lasted exactly 24 hours, and somewhere in those hours the foundation had cracked. How long had she been pretending to sleep beside me, counting down minutes until something I couldn't see? I listened to the house. Old farmhouse sounds, pine beams, settling wind in the eaves, the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Safe sounds. Familiar sounds. Except tonight they felt like a shell around something hollow. My Sunday clothes hung over the chair by the window. Dark shapes in darker room. When I'd changed for bed, I'd noticed my pocket felt lighter, like something had been removed. I couldn't remember what I'd carried. Wallet was on the dresser where I always left it. Keys on the hook by the door. What else had been there? The question nagged at me, but memory was slippery. Maybe nothing. Maybe paranoia making shadows solid. Lorraine's breathing continued its perfect rhythm, in, out, the sound of someone who'd practiced this, who'd planned for this moment, who was waiting for something while pretending the deepest sleep. The watch read 12:43 a.m. I thought about the message I'd deleted. Be careful. No name, no explanation, no area code, just 2 words from someone who knew I had this watch, who knew the number, who knew I needed warning. Alara had set it up. She was the only one who should have the number. But Alara wouldn't send cryptic warnings. She'd call, she'd explain, she'd drive the 70 miles from Casper at midnight if something was wrong. So who? And be careful of what? I lay in the dark, listening to my wife's too perfect breathing, the smartwatch heavy on my wrist, the night stretching toward dawn like a held breath. This was the last hour I believed my life was my own. I didn't know it then, but somewhere between midnight and morning, the 63 years I'd lived would split clean in half before and after. Before I knew. After I knew. The knowing was coming with the sunrise. I could feel it the way you feel weather changing in your bones. Something had shifted. The ground under my feet wasn't solid anymore. Lorraine's breathing didn't change. Steady. Perfect. Waiting. I closed my eyes and didn't sleep and waited for first light. The knowing came with the sunrise, but not the way I'd expected. The front door stood wide open to the Wyoming dawn, and I had no memory of opening it. I woke at 6:30 to cold air moving through the hallway, the smell of September morning and wheat stubble drifting into the house. For a moment I lay there trying to understand what was wrong, why the bedroom felt different. Then I heard the screen door creaking on its hinges, that particular rhythm of wind pushing wood. I got up and walked down the hallway in my bare feet pajamas, the pine floor cold against my soles. The front door wasn't just unlocked. It was standing open, maybe 2 feet, early light spilling across the threshold, the screen door swinging gently. I locked that door. I locked it every night for 40 years. I walked through the house, checking windows, the back door, looking for signs of break-in or disturbance. Nothing. The living room looked exactly as we'd left it. Kitchen clean, Lorraine's purse on the counter where it always sat, my wallet on the bedroom dresser, cash still inside. I stood in the hallway, staring at that open door, trying to remember. Last night, after midnight, I'd lain awake listening to Lorraine's controlled breathing, the smartwatch heavy on my wrist, waiting for dawn. Then what? Nothing. The memory stopped there and picked up again at 6:30, waking to cold air. Think, remember, what happened after midnight? The message, be careful. Then what? Blank, just blank. I heard movement behind me and turned to find Lorraine standing in the bedroom doorway wearing her blue bathrobe, hair still pinned from sleep. She looked past me at the open door. No surprise registered on her face. No alarm. No confusion. Just calm. You opened it at 4 this morning, William, she said. I heard you walking around. The words hit me like cold water. I don't remember that. I don't remember getting up at all. You were probably still half asleep. She moved past me to close the door, her hand steady on the knob. It happens at our age. I told you to go back to bed and you did. I was awake until past midnight, I said. After that, I don't. You got up at 4. Her voice stayed gentle, patient, like she was explaining something simple to someone slow. I heard you in the hallway. You said you needed air. You opened the door and stood there for a few minutes, then I got you back to bed. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say, no, that didn't happen. I would remember that. But doubt was already creeping in at the edges. Could I have gotten up in some half-dream state? Could I have walked to the door and forgotten? Memory is a strange country. You don't know it's been invaded until you find footprints where none should be. I don't remember any of that, I said quietly. Lorraine touched my arm. The first weeks of retirement can be disorienting. Your body doesn't know what to do with itself yet. Come on, I'll make breakfast. She walked to the kitchen like nothing was wrong, like finding your front door standing open at dawn was perfectly normal, and I followed because I didn't know what else to do. By 7, we were sitting at the oak kitchen table with coffee and bacon and scrambled eggs. The smell of it should have been comforting. Sunday breakfast ritual extended to Monday normal life continuing. But nothing felt normal. I ate mechanically while Lorraine talked about the weather forecast, asked what I planned to do with my day. Check the fence line, I said. Maybe ride out to the north pasture. That sounds nice. Getting back to the land. She smiled at me over her coffee cup. I looked down at my wrist. The smartwatch showed sleep data from last night: asleep, 11:47 p.m., awake, 6:15 a.m. 7 hours, 28 minutes, uninterrupted. No gaps, no 4 a.m. wake-up. The watch says I never woke up, I said, turning my wrist toward her. She glanced at it. Those things aren't perfect, William. They can't tell the difference between lying still and sleeping. You probably just lay there quiet when you got back in bed. The watch says I never woke up, but she says I did. One of us is wrong. I forced down the rest of breakfast while my mind turned in circles. Had I gotten up? Had I stood at that door at 4 in the morning with no memory of it? Was I losing time, losing myself? The coffee tasted like metal, the bacon like cardboard. Everything tasted like fear. At 8 o'clock, I went back to the front door in full daylight. Something was pulling me there, some instinct that said, look closer. I knelt down and examined the brass deadbolt in the bright morning sun. There, on the cylinder. A fresh, semicircular scratch, curved and deliberate, the kind of mark that comes from a bump key being worked into the mechanism. I'd learned about bump key tools in 1992 working a cattle theft case with the county sheriff's specialized lockpicks that left that exact curved signature on brass. Someone had picked this lock from the outside. Lorraine, I called, come look at this. She appeared in the hallway, dish towel in her hands. This is a bump key mark, I said, pointing to the scratch. Someone picked this lock from outside. She leaned down, squinted at it. Or you scratched it fumbling drunk at 4 in the morning. I wasn't drunk. I had one whiskey at 10 o'clock. You were half asleep walking around in the dark. You probably rattled your keys trying to lock it back up. She straightened, turned toward the kitchen. I need to finish the dishes. I know what a bump key scratch looks like, and I know I wasn't drunk. But she walked away like the conversation was finished, like the evidence I was holding didn't matter, like my memory and my experience and my 40 years of knowing how to read a crime scene were nothing compared to her calm certainty. For the first time in 63 years, I was afraid of my own mind. I ran my finger over that semicircular scratch, feeling the fresh brass exposed beneath the old finish. Someone had been in my house while I slept. Someone professional. Someone who knew how to work a bump key and leave almost no trace. And my wife of 40 years was telling me I'd done it myself while drunk. The question wasn't whether I was losing my mind. The question was whether someone wanted me to think I was. 3 days after the bump key scratch, I stopped trusting my memory and started trusting evidence. The dishes were already washed, drying in the rack beside the sink, and I had no memory of breakfast. September 5th, 8:30 in the morning. I'd woken at 6, walked down, intending to make eggs. That memory was clear. But now I stared at clean plates in the rack, the faint smell of bacon grease hanging in the air, my mind grasping at nothing. The bacon smell is real. The dishes are wet, still warm. The cast iron skillet sits in the rack with water droplets on black metal. And on the oak kitchen table lay our Wusthof meat cleaver. I walked over slowly. Picked it up. 8-inch German blade, walnut handle, worn smooth from decades. We kept it in the drawer by the stove. I had no memory of taking it out or using it. You finished eating 10 minutes ago, don't you remember? I turned. Lorraine stood in the doorway wearing her yellow cardigan, coffee mug in hand, watching me with those calm eyes. I came down to make breakfast. That's the last thing I remember. You made bacon and eggs, you ate, you washed the dishes. Patient, gentle. You forgot honey. The phrase landed strange. You forgot. Not you don't remember, not are you feeling okay, just you forgot, stated like fact. Footsteps on the porch, then Sterling walked in without knocking. My son lived 70 miles away in Casper. He didn't just drop by at 8:30 on a Thursday morning. Morning, Dad. He poured coffee like he'd been expected. Mom said you wanted to talk about the north pasture fence. I hadn't mentioned any fence. I don't think I did. Sterling and Lorraine exchanged a glance. Quick, practiced. Dad, you called me at 7 this morning. You forgot. The same phrase, the same gentle tone. That's twice this week. I looked between them, both watching me with identical expressions of concern that didn't reach their eyes. The same phrase, the exact same tone. They practice this. There's a specific terror in watching two people you love speak the same lie in perfect harmony. It's not anger you feel, it's vertigo. The ground tilting under your feet while everyone else stands steady and tells you the floor is level. "I'm fine," I said, putting the cleaver down, just adjusting to retirement. "Sure, Dad." Sterling's hand touched my shoulder. "But maybe we should think about getting you checked out. Memory issues at your age." I said I'm fine. The words came out harder than I meant. Sterling stepped back. Lorraine's expression didn't change. They left me alone with the clean dishes and the cleaver and the smell of bacon I couldn't remember cooking. That was September 5th. September 8th. I woke at 3 in the morning with my mouth dry and my head foggy like swimming up from deep water. Lorraine slept beside me or pretended to her breathing steady as a metronome. I'd been checking the smartwatch obsessively, every morning, every night reviewing the data like it might tell me what my brain couldn't. Sleep stages, heart rate, step count. The numbers were becoming my evidence. I pulled up the heart rate history. There, at exactly 3:14 a.m., a spike from 60 beats per minute to 112. Sharp vertical jump, then gradual decline over 20 minutes. And according to the device, I'd been in deep sleep the entire time. 112 during deep sleep. Your heart doesn't do that unless something makes it. I'd worked this farm 43 years. I knew my body like I knew the land. Resting heart rate between 58 and 62. But jumping to 112 while sleeping. That's not a nightmare. The watch would show REM sleep for dreams. This was deep sleep when your body should be calmest. Something happened at 3:14, something to my body. What makes a man's heart race to 112 while he sleeps if not poison or fear? I reached under my pillow carefully and pulled out the small spiral notebook I'd bought at the hardware store. 5 by 7 inches, the kind ranchers use for cattle counts. I'd been keeping it hidden, writing by the watch's glow. I wrote 9/8 3:14 AMHR 112 beats per minute, deep sleep impossible without cause. Then I flipped back through previous entries. September 2nd, front door open, 6:30 a.m. bump key scratch, L claims I opened at 4 a.m. watch, shows no wake. 9/5 dishes washed, no memory cleaver on table L plus S, both say, you forgot, same tone. 9/6 truck keys in freezer L says, you did it yesterday. 3 incidents in 6 days, all involving memory gaps, all involving Lorraine's calm certainty that I'd done things I couldn't remember. But this was different, a physical anomaly recorded by the device. Something that happened to my body while I slept, something that couldn't be explained away by forgetfulness or age. If I'm losing my mind, there'd be no pattern. Chaos doesn't have rhythm. I looked at Lorraine beside me in the dark. Her breathing hadn't changed once since I'd woken. Perfect rhythm, in, out, in, out. The breathing of someone pretending to sleep while they listen. She's awake, listening. I tucked the notebook deep under the mattress on my side where my weight would hold it secure, lay back down, closed my eyes, tried to match her rhythm, fake sleep for fake sleep. 3 incidents in 6 days, each designed to make me doubt my mind while my body kept the receipts. The heart rate spike wasn't random, it happened at 3:14 a.m., the kind of precision that suggested someone checking if a dose was working. And my wife, breathing too steady in the dark, was waiting to see if I'd notice. After documenting the heart rate spike, I stopped waiting for answers and started collecting ammunition. By the 11th of September, I had started counting the words like a man counting bullets. Every time someone said it, every variation of the phrase, I made tally marks in the spiral notebook under my mattress, tracking the script like a hunter tracking spoor. Tuesday morning, Lorraine at breakfast. You already fed the chickens, William, you forgot. I marked it, one vertical line in ink. Wednesday afternoon, Sterling visiting for coffee. You told me that story yesterday, Dad. You forgot. Another line. Thursday morning, Paloma dropping off Finn for the day, touching my arm with gentle concern. You forgot, didn't you? It's okay. Third line. Friday morning, Lorraine again. You took your medicine already, you forgot. I didn't take any medicine. Didn't have any prescription to take. But she said it with such certainty that I checked the bathroom cabinet anyway, my hands shaking while I searched for pill bottles that didn't exist. Fourth line. Friday evening. You locked Roy in the barn this afternoon. You forgot you did it. Fifth. Saturday breakfast. You already had coffee. You forgot you poured it. 6 times in 5 days. Always the same gentle, pitying intonation. Always that specific combination of concern and certainty that made me doubt the ground beneath my feet. I kept the notebook hidden, writing by smartwatch glow at night, my hand moving in the dark while Lorraine's breathing stayed too steady beside me. Each tally mark was proof I wasn't imagining the pattern. Each one was evidence or madness, I couldn't tell which anymore. Saturday evening, they all came for dinner. Lorraine made pot roast. Sterling brought wine. Paloma brought Finn and a store-bought pie and that gentle smile that never quite reached her eyes. I sat at the head of the oak table and watched them like a man watching actors in a play he'd seen too many times. Paloma glanced at Lorraine before she spoke. Quick, almost imperceptible, checking for permission or cue. "How was your week, Dad?" Sterling cut his meat with precise movements. "Fine, quiet." "Any more memory issues?" Lorraine's voice was honey over barbed wire. I set my fork down. "What memory issues?" Another glance. Paloma to Lorraine to Sterling. Silent communication running beneath the surface conversation. "Dad, you're not okay." Sterling's line delivered on cue. Same concerned frown he'd worn exactly 3 times this week. "We need to talk about this." Gaslighting is a slow drowning. They don't push your head under, they just convince you that breathing underwater is normal. "Maybe he should see someone," Paloma said softly. Professionally. The pause before delivery, the inflection, the way Sterling nodded at precisely the right moment. Theater. All of it theater. "I'm fine," I said. "You're not," Lorraine said. "And that's okay. Memory issues at your age, I'm 63, not 90. "Dad," Sterling's hand on my shoulder, rehearsed gesture. "We're just worried." They practice this. Every pause, every inflection, every sympathetic touch and concerned glance. I was watching a performance refined through repetition. I excused myself before dessert. At 3 in the morning, I stood at the bathroom sink staring at my reflection in the weak yellow light. The face looking back was 63 years old, lined from sun and work eyes, shadowed from too many sleepless nights. A man who couldn't remember eating breakfast, opening doors, feeding chickens, taking medicine that didn't exist. I gripped the cold porcelain knuckles white. "Maybe they're right," I whispered to the mirror. "Maybe I am sick." Uncle Frank had it. Early onset dementia at 68. Started with forgetting names, ended with forgetting his own children. I'd watched him deteriorate over 3 years until he didn't know his own reflection. 6 incidents, 10 days. All documented in a notebook I kept hidden like a guilty secret. But what if I was documenting delusions? What if the notebook itself was proof of my unraveling mind? Am I losing my mind? The bathroom tiles were cold under my bare feet. The house creaked around me, old wood, settling familiar sounds, suddenly sinister. "I know what you're thinking. A man who doubts his sanity is already halfway gone." I turned off the light and walked back to the bedroom. Sat on the edge of the bed in darkness, Lorraine's shape, a shadow under the quilt. My hands were shaking. Then the memory surfaced unbidden and sharp as broken glass. Rosa Delgado. 1991 through 93, she'd cleaned our house twice a week. Mexican woman, maybe 45, with silver threads in her black hair and hands that never stopped moving. She'd worn rose perfume that filled the rooms when she worked. March 1992. Lorraine said $200 was missing from the bedroom drawer, accused Rosa. Rosa denied it, tears running down her face, hands trembling. But Lorraine insisted. Same gentle certainty she used now, same patient, unshakable conviction. "You must have taken it without realizing, Rosa. It happens. Memory lapses. You probably needed it and forgot you took it." Rosa had quit 3 days later, believing she'd stolen money she couldn't remember taking, believing her own hands had betrayed her. 3 months after that, Lorraine found the $200 in her brown coat pocket. "Oh," she'd said, "I must have put it there and forgot." She never called Rosa, never apologized, just shrugged and spent the money on groceries. I sat in the dark bedroom, that memory crystallizing with perfect clarity. Rosa Delgado, $200, brown coat pocket, March 1992. Thursday morning she'd quit on a Thursday, and I remembered the smell of her rose perfume mixing with the coffee she'd made before she left. 33 years ago, and I could see her trembling hands. If I remember 1991 down to the coat pocket, I'm not losing my memory. I stood in the dark bedroom, the 1991 memory sharp as broken glass. Rosa Delgado, $200, brown coat pocket, March. 33 years ago, and I remembered her trembling hands when she quit. If I could recall a Thursday morning in 1991 down to the smell of her rose perfume, then my mind wasn't broken, which meant something else was happening in this house. The Rosa Delgado memory had given me clarity. But clarity doesn't stop a wildfire once it's lit. The prayer showed up on my phone at 7:30 in the morning, and by 8 o'clock, 820 people knew I was losing my mind. I was drinking coffee at the kitchen table when Facebook lit up with notifications. 17 in the first 5 minutes. I opened the app and found myself staring at my own face from last year's Buffalo Harvest Festival, standing by a hay bale, smiling sunlight on the wheat field behind me. The caption read, "Praying for our dear friend William and the Carter family during this difficult time. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers." Posted by Francis Platt to Buffalo Community Group, 820 members. The comments were already flooding in. What happened? Is Will sick? Oh no, I heard it was Alzheimer's. Such a shame, he's so young. Lorraine must be devastated. 17 shares in 30 minutes. My face spreading across Johnson County like a missing person poster for someone who was standing right here alive, holding his coffee with steady hands. Frances Platt. We'd dated in high school 1979 through 83. I'd taken her to homecoming prom, driven her to senior skip day at the lake. Then I'd met Lorraine, and that was that. Frances had married twice, since divorced, twice ran the flower shop on Main Street. Why would she post this? I scrolled through to the comments. Someone had shared details, specific incidents, exact dates. He forgot he'd already eaten breakfast. Opened the door at 4 a.m. and didn't remember. His son is worried sick. Information only my family would know. Someone fed her the script. Someone gave her the photo, the details, the timeline, made it credible, made it devastating. I set the phone down and watched the notifications multiply. At 10 o'clock, I drove into Buffalo for feed store supplies. Needed 50-pound bags of chicken scratch, fence staples, diesel for the tractor. Normal errands, normal Tuesday. Except nothing was normal anymore. I parked on Main Street and walked past the white clapboard church, the post office with its faded flag, the Sinclair station that had been there since 1967. Neighbors I'd known for 30 years nodded as I passed, brief, uncomfortable acknowledgments before they looked away. Mrs. Howell, who'd taught Sunday school when my kids were small, crossed the street to avoid walking past me on the same sidewalk. Jim Peterson, who'd helped me build the new barn in 2003, waved from his truck but didn't stop to talk like he normally would. You can survive your family turning on you, but when your town starts looking at you like you're already in the ground, that's when you understand isolation. Outside the post office, an elderly woman I recognized but couldn't name approached. She took my hand in both of hers, patted it gently. "We're all praying for you, dear," she said, her eyes wet with sympathy. "It's such a shame." "I'm fine, Mrs. Howell, just fine." "Of course you are, dear." The tone you'd use with a child. "Of course you are." She walked away, and I stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the stares from every window, every passing truck. 5 days. It had taken 5 days to turn me into the town's tragedy. I walked past Platt's Blooms, the painted wooden sign swinging gently above the door. The window display showed September mums in copper and gold, purple asters, sunflowers tall as fence posts. The glass was clean enough to see through clearly. Frances stood inside arranging a bouquet, her silver hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. 61 years old and still beautiful in that weathered Wyoming way. She looked up, saw me through the window, and froze. The expression on her face wasn't performance. It was pure, genuine sympathy mixed with something that looked like grief. She looked at me the way you'd look at someone dying. She believes it. She actually believes I'm sick. Frances Platt, 61, and owner of Buffalo's only flower shop, posted that Facebook prayer, not from malice, but from 41 years of unspoken affection my son weaponized. She'd loved me in high school. Probably still carried some echo of that feeling, the way first loves linger in the corners of your heart even after 40 years of other lives lived. And someone sterling, I'd bet my farm on it, had found that old photo in the attic and used it like ammunition. I kept walking. The next day, September 18th, I drove into town again. Needed to pick up mail, deposit a check at the bank. Regular life continuing while my reputation crumbled. Walking past the Main Street Cafe at 2 in the afternoon, I glanced through the wide front window. Sterling sat in the corner booth with Frances. He was leaning close, his body angled toward her in that intimate way that suggests familiarity, trust. His hand rested on her shoulder. Frances held a napkin to her eyes, wiping tears, nodding at whatever he was saying. I stopped on the sidewalk 20 feet from the window watching. He's sitting too close, touching her too familiarly. Sterling whispered something and Frances covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. He squeezed her shoulder, leaned even closer. The body language of comfort, of shared grief, of conspiracy disguised as compassion. She's crying. He's comforting her about me, making her his witness. The cruelest thing my son ever did wasn't plotting against me, it was making Frances Platt cry about it. I could see it clearly now. Sterling had found that old photo, probably the same one from the Facebook post, showed it to Frances, reminded her of 1979, of homecoming dances and first kisses, and the boy she'd loved before he chose someone else. Then he'd fed her the story, Dad's deteriorating. Memory issues. We're so worried. We need people who care about him to help us document the decline. And Frances, with her genuine affection and 41 years of what might have been, became the perfect weapon. Sincere, believable, heartbroken. Through the cafe window, Sterling whispered something that made Frances cover her mouth, tears streaming. His hand stayed on her shoulder, too familiar, too practiced. I walked away, knowing the conspiracy had metastasized beyond my house into the whole town. They weren't just gaslighting me anymore. They were recruiting witnesses. Sterling had recruited Francis. The question was how many more would follow. By the 19th, people who'd known me for 30 years started crossing the street when they saw me coming. Sunday morning at First Methodist, the same church I'd attended since moving to Buffalo in 1984. After service, I stood on the steps where I'd stood 1,000 Sundays before, shaking hands, talking weather and crops and football scores. Except this Sunday, the handshakes were brief, the eye contact fleeting. People nodded politely and moved on before I could start a conversation. "Good sermon," I said to Jim Peterson, who'd helped me build the new barn in 2003. "Sure was." He smiled, patted my shoulder, walked away. No invitation to coffee at the diner like usual. No lingering conversation about the Broncos game. Just sure was. Monday at the post office, Martha the clerk handed me my mail without the usual small talk about her grandkids or my chickens. "Here's your mail, Mr. Hewitt. Have a good day." No eye contact. Formal. Like I was a stranger instead of someone she'd known for decades. Tuesday at the gas station, Bill looked away while pumping diesel into my truck. Studied the pump numbers with intense focus, handed me the receipt without a word. Wednesday on Main Street, I saw Ray Denton coming toward me on the sidewalk. Ray and I had been fishing buddies for 25 years. Every spring, we'd drive up to the Bighorn River for cutthroat trout camp in his trailer, drink beer, and tell stories under the stars. He saw me. I saw him see me. Then he crossed the street. "Take care, Will," he called from the opposite sidewalk, waving. Kept walking. In 5 days, I went from neighbor to pariah. You don't know loneliness until your hometown treats you like a ghost who hasn't realized he's dead yet. September 23rd. I needed milk and bread. Lorraine insisted on coming along, said she wanted to pick up something from the pharmacy next door. I knew what that meant, supervision. Making sure I didn't embarrass myself in public, didn't confirm everyone's suspicions with confused behavior. Brett's Market smelled like it always did, fresh produce, cleaning solution coffee from the deli counter. Familiar. Safe. Except Lorraine walked 3 meters behind me, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to pretend independence. I grabbed milk from the cooler, bread from the shelf, walked to the checkout. The 19-year-old cashier at Brett's Market, Tobias Whitfield, had sandy hair and the kind of easy smile that suggested he hadn't learned cynicism yet. He looked up when I approached, and that smile didn't falter or freeze or shift into sympathy. "Morning, Mr. Hewitt. Did you catch that Broncos game Sunday crazy finish?" I stopped momentarily, startled by the normalcy of it. "I did. Hell of a fourth quarter." "Right." Tobias scanned the milk, the bread. "That field goal in the last 30 seconds. I about jumped through my ceiling." He was looking at my eyes, not past them, talking to me, not at me, treating me like an actual human being instead of a dying patient to pity. "Your total's 847. I handed him a 10. He made change, dropped coins in my palm with the same casual efficiency he'd use with anyone. "Have a good one, Mr. Hewitt." "You too, Tobias." Lorraine appeared at my elbow as we left. "You remember his name?" The question landed like a test. "Of course I do. He's worked there 2 years. "Just checking," she smiled. "I'll meet you at the truck. Need to run next door." I sat in the truck cab in the parking lot windows down September breeze, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and diesel from the highway. Pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. Francis's prayer post from a week ago had grown. 47 comments now. I scrolled through the latest editions. Alzheimer's is so cruel to families. My uncle had early onset too, such a difficult journey. Praying for Lorraine's strength during this trial. They'd already buried me. 47 people convinced I was dying, convinced my mind was leaving before my body had the decency to follow. I kept scrolling, anger building with each sympathetic word, and then I saw a name I didn't recognize. Mendez_ranch_98. Posted 6 hours ago. The comment read, "Look closer at who lives in that house." Attached was a photo. Black and white, slightly grainy, the kind of quality you got from cameras in the early 90s. It showed me around age 35, younger face, darker hair, standing on my front porch holding a coffee mug. Next to me stood another man, Mexican-American, maybe 40 years old, also holding coffee. He wore jeans and a work shirt, and on his belt, partially visible, a faded police badge. I stared at the photo, trying to place it, trying to remember when someone would have taken this picture. Then recognition hit, cold and sharp. Glenn, that's Glenn Eaton, my cow herd, except younger, 20-some years younger, and wearing a badge. Glenn had worked my farm for 7 years. Quiet man, kept to himself, knew cattle and fencing, and never asked questions. I'd hired him in 2017 when my last hand retired. He'd shown up with references from a ranch in New Mexico, worked hard, lived in the bunkhouse, never caused trouble. Never mentioned being law enforcement. Why would a farm cow herd hide a police badge for 7 years unless he was hiding for a reason? I zoomed in on the photo. The badge was partially obscured but visible enough. Glenn's face was younger but unmistakable, same quiet eyes, same weathered features. Look closer at who lives in that house. Someone knows. Someone knows Glenn's real identity and is trying to tell me something. I clicked on the Mendez_Ranch_98 profile, created September 2024. No posts, no friends, no information. A ghost account made specifically to leave this comment. Lorraine's reflection appeared in the truck's side mirror walking across the parking lot from the pharmacy with a small paper bag. I took a screenshot of the photo and comment, then deleted the comment thread from my view. By the time Lorraine opened the passenger door, my phone was in my pocket, and my face was neutral. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." I deleted the comment before Lorraine came back to the truck but took a screenshot first. Glenn's face in that photo, 20-some years younger badge catching the light. He'd worked my land for 7 years without mentioning law enforcement. Mendez_Ranch_98 knew who he really was, which meant somebody was watching my house and watching out for me. Help was coming, but I was running out of time to meet it. The water bottle came with a message I wasn't supposed to see, and my wife, standing 3 meters away, never noticed the handoff. September 24th, 11 in the morning. I needed eggs and coffee. Lorraine insisted on accompanying me to Brett's Market, said she wanted to pick up magazines. She positioned herself by the rack near the entrance with a clear sightline to the checkout. Tobias Whitfield stood at register 3, same easy smile as yesterday. I grabbed what I needed and approached. "Morning, Mr. Hewitt." He scanned the eggs, the coffee. "Morning." His hand moved and the receipt fell to the floor. "Whoops, sorry about that." He bent down to retrieve it. I started to bend to reflexive courtesy, and his other hand pressed something into mine below the counter line, cold plastic the shape of a water bottle. Our eyes met for half a second. His expression said, "Don't look, don't react." I straightened, palmed the Aquafina bottle against my jacket. "Your total's $12.38. I handed him 15. He made change. The whole exchange took maybe 30 seconds. Lorraine looked up from a Home and Garden magazine, saw me collecting bags, went back to reading. He timed that drop perfectly. This was planned. In the truck, I waited until Lorraine went into the pharmacy next door, then examined the bottle. Small white sticker on the back, the kind you'd print from a home label maker. Tiny text in black. "Help is coming, call your daughter now, MW." I peeled the sticker off, tucked it in my wallet, hid the bottle under the seat. MW, someone with resources, someone coordinating, someone who knew Tobias, knew me, knew Alara. Call your daughter now. Not tomorrow, not when safe, now. That night after dinner, the room tilted. I'd been experiencing dizziness for days, slight mental fog after breakfast, mild vertigo after lunch. But September 24th's dinner hit different. I stood from the oak table and the floor moved sideways. I gripped the table edge, knuckles white. "Are you all right?" Lorraine's voice came from somewhere far away. "Just tired. Long day." The metallic taste lingered in my mouth. My vision doubled for a moment. 2 Lorraines, 2 kitchen windows, 2 of everything. Poison doesn't announce itself. It whispers in your veins until you can't remember what your own body used to feel like. September 25th. Breakfast made my thoughts sluggish. Lunch made the walls breathe. Dinner made my hands feel like they belonged to someone else. September 26th. I couldn't stand without gripping furniture. The world moved in slow motion while my heart raced. Lorraine watched me carefully during meals, adjusted the tea strength, changed portion sizes, offered seconds with gentle insistence. She's calibrating, testing dosage, seeing how far she can push before I collapse completely. I started pretending to eat more than I did, pushed food around my plate, poured tea into the pothos plant when she turned away. The plant was already dying, brown edges creeping across green leaves. September 27th, 2:30 in the morning, I woke from a nightmare that felt too real to be dreaming. In the dream, my legs didn't belong to me. I'd been walking across the farmhouse kitchen, and suddenly my legs were moving independently. I watched them walk, tried to control them, couldn't. They just kept going while I floated above, trapped in my own skull, puppeting a body that no longer answered to me. I woke in cold sweat sheets damp against my skin, heart hammering. The smartwatch glowed 98 beats per minute. Not sleep, terror. My legs, I couldn't feel them in the dream, couldn't control them. I wiggled my toes under the quilt. They moved, still mine, still responding to commands from my brain. But the disconnect had felt so real, so immediate, like my consciousness was separating from my flesh. This isn't normal aging, this is chemical. Lorraine's breathing beside me stayed perfectly steady. In, out, same rhythm as always, too steady, too perfect. She's awake. She's always awake when these things happen. You never appreciate consciousness until someone starts dissolving it chemically meal by meal. I lay there until 4:30, then gave up on sleep, dressed quietly in the dark, slipped downstairs and out to the barn before Lorraine could wake and ask questions. The barn smelled like hay and diesel and old wood. Dawn crept through gaps in the board's gray light turning gold. I went to the back corner where we kept 50-pound bags of Purina feed stacked against the wall. Retrieved the water bottle from where I'd hidden it, wedged between two bags. Reread the message in the growing light. Help is coming, call your daughter now, MW. MW, not random initials. Someone with authority, resources, someone who knew the whole picture. Call Alara now. Not a suggestion, a deadline. But calling her meant risk. Lorraine monitored my phone, stood close during conversations. If I called Alara and Lorraine overheard, if she suspected I was onto them, what would she do? Accelerate the timeline, increase the dosage until I couldn't think straight enough to resist? Or wait and risk losing cognitive function entirely? Risk waking up one morning unable to tell my own body from someone else's? Risk the dissociative dreams becoming permanent? I felt myself slipping away, not memory exactly, but connection. The link between thought and action, between self and flesh. The drugs weren't just making me forget. They were dissolving the boundary between me and not me. I'm slipping away from myself, I whispered to the empty barn. A rooster crowed from the henhouse. Normal sound, normal morning. Except nothing was normal. I was standing in my own barn at 5 in the morning, hiding a water bottle like contraband because my wife was poisoning me, and the only people who knew were a 19-year-old cashier and someone with the initials MW. I stood in the barn holding that water bottle, watching dawn creep across Wyoming through the gaps in the boards. Call your daughter now. Not tomorrow, not when convenient. Now. The dissociative dreams were getting worse. Soon I wouldn't be able to tell my own legs from someone else's. Soon I wouldn't be able to fight back at all. I came back from the barn that morning planning to call Alara. Instead, I found my ammunition destroyed. The coffee had soaked through every page, turning 4 weeks of careful documentation into brown smudged nothing. September 28th, 7:15 in the morning. I walked into the kitchen, still damp from the shower, and saw the small spiral notebook on the counter, the one I'd kept under my pillow. It sat in a spreading pool of dark coffee pages, warped and swollen ink bleeding into illegible smears. Lorraine stood by the sink, drying her hands with a dish towel. "Oh, William, I'm so sorry," she said, turning toward me with an expression of distress. "I bumped the coffee pot and it spilled right on your notebook." I picked it up. The coffee had penetrated deep, not just surface moisture, but saturated through the binding. Every page stuck to the next. The entries I'd written by Smartwatch glow the dates and heart rates and tally marks, all rendered completely illegible by brown stain spreading through paper fibers. "When did this happen?" "Just now, while you were in the shower. I tried to blot it, but the ink just ran everywhere." She gestured to wadded paper towels in the trash, genuinely stained with coffee and ink. Evidence of attempted rescue. "I feel terrible. What were you writing in there? Maybe I can help you remember." The question landed too carefully, too interested. "Just fence repair dates, chicken feed schedules, nothing important." "Are you sure you seem to write in it every night before bed?" She's watched me, knows my routine, waited for the right moment. "Farm maintenance stuff. I'll remember what I need to." "I really am sorry." Her voice stayed steady, pitch-controlled. Eye contact sustained just the right amount of time. Body language performing guilt without experiencing it. I dropped the ruined notebook in the trash. Accidents happen. "I'll make fresh coffee. Sit down, I'll get you breakfast." I sat at the oak table and watched her move through the kitchen, pouring coffee from a second pot that was somehow already prepared, cracking eggs into the skillet, all the practiced domesticity of 40 years. Her apology felt rehearsed, the concern in her voice too measured. She found the notebook, read every page, then staged the spill to destroy evidence while I was in the shower. There's a special kind of clarity that comes when you catch someone destroying evidence. You know you're not paranoid, you're just outnumbered. I ate breakfast, drank the coffee she'd poured, just 3 sips to be safe, dumped the rest in the sink when she went to get the mail, complimented the eggs, acted like nothing had changed. At 9:30, Lorraine announced she needed to run errands in Buffalo. "Do you need anything while I'm out?" "No, I'm fine. Might work on the fence line." "Don't overdo it in this heat." I watched her truck disappear down the gravel road, waited 5 minutes to be sure, then walked directly to the barn. The smell hit me, first hay and diesel and old leather, familiar as breathing. I went to the back corner where we kept 50-pound bags of Purina animal feed stacked against the wall behind the tractor. Green bags with red lettering. I'd bought 12 last month. I opened the third bag from the bottom, reached deep into the pellets. My hand found plastic. I pulled out a freezer bag wrapped tight, the kind you'd use for meat in the deep freeze. Inside was a second spiral notebook. I unwrapped it carefully, the plastic crackling in the quiet barn. Opened to the first page. September 2nd, front door open 6:30 a.m. bump key. Scratch on deadbolt L claims I opened at 4 a.m. Watch shows no wake. All of it. Every entry intact. The missing breakfast with the cleaver. The heart rate spike to 112 beats per minute at 3:14 a.m. The tally marks for you forgot 6 times between September 11th and 15th. The Rosa Delgado memory on the 16th proving my mind was sharp. The Mendez_Ranch_98 photo on the 23rd. 4 weeks of evidence she didn't know existed. 4 weeks of my handwriting proving I wasn't crazy that notebook was worth more than the land they were trying to steal. I'd started the second notebook on September 8th, the night of the heart rate anomaly. Something had told me keep 2 copies. Hide one where they'll never look. Let them find the obvious one under the pillow. She destroyed the decoy. Never knew about this one. I sat on a hay bale in the barn reading through every page slowly. The pattern was undeniable. Not random memory loss, not aging confusion. Systematic gaslighting backed by chemical intervention. Door incidents. Food tampering. Coordinated scripts. Public reputation destruction. Physical deterioration. All documented in my own hand, dated and specific. MW's message echoed in my head, "Call your daughter now." I pulled out my phone, stared at Alara's contact information. Her photo smiled up at me, taken at last year's Harvest Festival, same photo Francis had used in that Facebook prayer. The window was narrowing. Lorraine was escalating the drugs. I could feel it in my body, the dizziness getting worse, the dissociative symptoms creeping in. She was destroying evidence. Sterling was recruiting the town as witnesses to my decline. If I waited another week, I might lose the cognitive ability to explain this coherently. Might wake up one morning unable to remember why I'd been fighting at all. 4 weeks of proof in my hands, heart rates that didn't lie, patterns that couldn't be explained away. Time to fight back, I whispered to the empty barn. I stood in the barn holding that backup notebook, 4 weeks of evidence she didn't know existed. She'd destroyed the decoy thinking she'd erased my proof, but I'd been 3 steps ahead since September 8th. The phone in my hand felt heavier than it should. Time to call Alara. Time to stop documenting and start fighting. I had the evidence and the determination. What I didn't have yet was confirmation that anyone else was fighting with me. The code appeared under my porch chair in white chalk, and I hadn't seen that number sequence in 29 years. September 30th, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A white Ford pickup rolled up the gravel drive and parked by the cottonwood. Stanley Riddle, my 70-year-old neighbor and retired inspector from Cheyenne, climbed out with the slow deliberation of a man whose knees had logged too many years. "Afternoon, Will," he called, walking toward the porch. "Mind if I sit a spell?" "Course not. Good to see you, Stanley." He settled into one of the white pine chairs with a grunt. Getting too old for farm work, knees remind me every morning. We talked weather, talked wheat yields. I told him 42 bushels per acre, not bad for a dry September. Talked about the Broncos' chances this season. Normal neighbor conversation, the kind we'd had 100 times over the years since he'd moved to the property 2 miles east. Except Lorraine appeared in the doorway 5 minutes into the visit, arms crossed, watching. "Can I get you gentlemen some iced tea?" she asked. "No thank you, ma'am," Stanley said. "Just stop by to check on Will here. Make sure retirement's treating him well." "It's an adjustment," Lorraine said, "for both of us." She stayed in the doorway the entire 30 minutes, listening, monitoring, making sure nothing passed between us that shouldn't. Stanley talked about the old days, the cattle theft case we'd worked together in 1995 when he was still with the state police and I'd been coordinating with county on herd tracking. He laughed about teaching me radio codes that summer. "You remember any of those 10 codes I drilled into you?" he asked. "Some, most of them faded over time. Shame. Useful language." He stood at 3:30, joints creaking. "Well, I better head home before Martha wonders where I got to. Good seeing you, Will." "You too, Stanley." His truck disappeared down the gravel road, dust rising in the afternoon sun. Lorraine went back inside. I sat on the porch another 5 minutes, then stood to go in myself. Autumn dust had settled on everything, chairs, railing, floorboards. I wiped the chair Stanley had used out of habit, same as I'd wipe any furniture left outside too long. Underneath the chair on the painted wood of the porch floor, someone had written in small, precise letters with white chalk, 10 to 86. I stared at those numbers. 1086, officer needs assistance, situation serious. Stanley had taught me that code in 1995. We'd used it during the cattle theft investigation when coordinating between agencies. The shorthand for this is real. This is urgent, help is needed now. A police code written in chalk under a porch chair is the quietest scream for help you'll ever see. Stanley knows. He's been watching the house, monitoring the situation, confirming what I already suspected. I'm in documented legal and personal danger. I erased the code with my shoe, grinding the chalk into nothing. Looked around. No one watching, no cameras I could see, just Wyoming afternoon and distant wheat and the knowledge that the network was bigger than I'd realized. How many of them are there, Tobias at the market? MW with the water bottle message. Mendez Ranch 98 with Glenn's photo. Now Stanley confirming from law enforcement perspective. How many people had been watching my back while I thought I was fighting alone? That night at 10 o'clock, headlights swept across the farmhouse. A gray Subaru 2022, newer than Alara usually drove, parked in the driveway. My daughter stepped out carrying her MacBook and a black leather messenger bag. I could see USB drives visible in the open pocket. Lorraine appeared on the porch before I could. Alara, why didn't you tell me you were coming? Had a free weekend, thought I'd surprise Dad. Too casual. Too practiced. The same tone I'd been using for 4 weeks when lying to Lorraine's face. You should have called ahead. I would have made dinner. That's okay, Mom. I ate in Casper. Just wanted to see Dad. She hugged Lorraine. Hugged me. Carried her bags inside like this was normal, like she hadn't driven 70 miles on a Monday night for no stated reason. Lorraine made tea. We sat at the kitchen table making small talk. Alara's work, her apartment, whether she was eating enough vegetables. Lorraine asked pointed questions about why she'd really come home. Just missed you guys. That's all. I'd spent 4 weeks believing I was fighting alone, and all along my daughter had been building an army. At 11 o'clock, Alara went to her old bedroom. Lorraine and I went to ours. I lay in the dark listening to my wife's breathing, find its too perfect rhythm, the sound of someone pretending sleep while monitoring the house. 11:30, my phone vibrated under the pillow. I pulled it out carefully, screen brightness turned down to almost nothing. Text from Alara. Dad, meet me at Hank's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Don't tell Mom. I read it twice. Deleted it immediately. Turned the phone face down on the nightstand. Hank's, Bernard Upshaw's machinery repair shop on the south edge of Buffalo. We'd taken the tractor there for hydraulics work last spring. Hank Bernard had been doing farm equipment repair for 30 years. Meet me at 2 p.m. Don't tell Mom. She knows. She's known for a while. Long enough to plan this arrival coordinate with whoever MW is, bring a laptop full of evidence and USB drives. Tomorrow the war starts. I lay in the dark listening to Lorraine's controlled breathing, the sound of her waiting to see if I'd do anything suspicious. My phone stayed dark. My breathing stayed steady. But my mind was already at 2 p.m. tomorrow, walking into that repair shop, learning what my daughter had discovered. I turned off my phone and lay in the dark, Lorraine's breathing too perfect beside me. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., Hank's repair shop. Tomorrow I'd learn how many people had been watching my back while I thought I was drowning alone. Tomorrow the 30 days of documenting would become 30 seconds of action. The war started at 2 o'clock on October 1st with a locked door and a laptop screen I wasn't supposed to see. I drove into Buffalo, telling Lorraine I needed to check the tractor's hydraulics at Bernard Upshaw's shop. She'd watched me leave from the kitchen window, arms crossed, calculating whether the excuse was real. Bernard's place sat on the south edge of town, a metal building with peeling paint and a gravel lot full of disassembled combines and tractors in various states of repair. The sign above the bay door read, Upshaw Farm Equipment, in faded red letters. I parked and walked to the front entrance. Bernard stood in the doorway, a 58-year-old man built like fence wire grease under his fingernails and silver in his close-cropped hair. He'd run this shop for 30 years with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent another 30 in military intelligence before retiring to Wyoming. Will, he said, come on in. I stepped inside. He closed the door behind me and turned the deadbolt. No explanation, no pleasantries, just the solid click of a lock engaging. This way. He led me through the shop floor, past tool benches and engine hoists, through a door marked Office in the back corner. Alara sat at a metal desk with her MacBook open, the screen casting blue light on her face. She looked up when we entered. Hi, Dad. Alara, what's... Sit down, Bernard said, pulling a folding chair from against the wall. You're going to want to sit for this. I sat. The office smelled like oil and old coffee and something metallic I couldn't place. A single window looked out onto the gravel lot, dusty afternoon light slanting through. Alara turned the laptop toward me. I need to show you something. The screen displayed a graph, blue lines rising and falling in regular patterns. Timestamps running down the left side, signal strength measurements across the bottom. This is data from your smartwatch, she said. Specifically the wireless signal log. Every time the device tries to connect to Wi-Fi or sync data, it creates a record. I stared at the graph. The patterns were clear, consistent interference at the same times every day. See these gaps? She pointed to flat sections where the blue line dropped to nothing. Those are jamming events. Someone's using a signal blocker to prevent your watch from transmitting data. When 3 to 4 a.m. every morning and 11 a.m. to noon every day. She scrolled through weeks of logs. The timing is precise, clinical. 3 to 4 a.m. when Lorraine was in the kitchen making my morning coffee before I woke. 11 to noon when she insisted I come in from the fields for lunch, when she stood close while I ate, when the dizziness always hit worst. She's blocking the watch during poisoning windows, I said quietly. Alara nodded. Preventing it from recording your heart rate, spikes your movement patterns, anything that would document what she's doing to you. The landline on Bernard's desk rang suddenly loud and jarring in the small office. He glanced at it, let it ring 3 times, then go to voicemail. Farm equipment supplier asking about a parts order, probably. He didn't move to answer. None of us spoke until the ringing stopped. There's more, Bernard said when silence returned. The watch itself. He pulled a printout from a folder on the desk, set it in front of me. Serial numbers, purchase records, shipping manifests. I traced the device serial number through supplier databases, he said. Called in some favors from my old life. That watch didn't come from a retail store. What do you mean? It was ordered through a government procurement account, specifically a Garmin contract account used by Wyoming law enforcement agencies. He tapped the manifest. Ordered August 15th, shipped to a sheriff's office address in Buffalo. Delivered August 20th. I looked at Alara. She met my eyes steadily. I didn't buy that watch, Dad. I handed it to you at your birthday party, but I didn't purchase it. Sheriff Brent Travers did. The name hit like cold water. Sheriff Travers. Johnson County Law Enforcement. The man who'd worked cattle theft cases with Stanley Riddle, who knew every rancher in a 100-mile radius, who had access to evidence chains and legal authority and resources I couldn't imagine. He's been protecting you, Alara said. Monitoring you. The watch was planted as a surveillance device for your benefit, not Lorraine's. Someone in law enforcement has known about this conspiracy for weeks, maybe months. They've been collecting evidence while she thought she was operating in the dark. Someone with a badge has been watching, documenting, building a case. MW, the water bottle message. Help is coming, call your daughter now, MW. Not Mendez Ranch, not a code, initials. Melissa Warner, Marcus Webb, Michael Winters. I looked at Bernard. Who's MW? He shook his head. Above my clearance. I'm just the tech guy who traces serial numbers and reads signal logs. But whoever they are, they've been coordinating this operation since before your birthday. Outside, a diesel engine rumbled into the gravel lot. All 3 of us froze, listening. The engine idled for a moment, heavy, loud, close to the building. Then it shifted into gear and pulled away, the sound fading down Main Street toward the highway. Bernard exhaled. Alara's shoulders relaxed. We don't have much time, she said. Lorraine will expect you back within the hour. There's more, I asked. There's always more. She closed the signal interference graphs and opened a different folder. Audio files, recorded from inside your farmhouse over the past 3 weeks. How? Better you don't know the details. Plausible deniability, but I have them. 2 in particular you need to hear. She looked at Bernard. Some silent communication passed between them. Alara closed the laptop and pulled a thumb drive from her jacket pocket. Small, black, innocent looking. 2 recordings, she said quietly. 1 from your kitchen at night. 1 from your living room. She held the drive between her fingers like evidence at trial. Dad, these recordings, they're going to change everything. You ready to hear your wife's real voice? I nodded. Ready or not, I needed to hear what my wife sounded like when she thought no one was listening. Alara plugged the thumb drive into Bernard's laptop, and the first audio file opened with a hiss of static. Then voices. Clear. Unmistakable. My kitchen at 3:42 in the morning, according to the timestamp in the corner of the audio player. 2 milligrams at breakfast maintains the confusion without triggering hospital-level symptoms. Lorraine's voice. Not the gentle tone she used with me, clinical. Detached, like discussing livestock dosage. And Evening Sterling, my son, my 30-year-old son who'd stood at my birthday party and smiled while handing me cake. 1.5 in the whiskey. Any more and he might stop drinking it altogether. We need compliance, not resistance. The Apex Pharma rep said we could push to 3 milligrams total if needed. Not yet. By Thanksgiving he won't remember signing anything. Clean and legal. The cognitive impairment will be documented by then. Francis's prayer post started that beautifully. I sat frozen in the folding chair, hands gripping the metal armrests. That's her, I whispered. That's actually her voice. No performance, no gentleness, just cold calculation about dosage and timelines and legal documentation of my deteriorating mind. By Thanksgiving. November 28th, 7 weeks away. They'd planned to have me sign away the farm while chemically impaired by late November, make it look voluntary, make it look like the confused actions of a man losing his faculties. Elara let the recording play for another minute, Sterling asking about side effects, Lorraine assuring him the protocol was safe enough, neither of them expressing concern about what they were doing to me. Just logistics, just business. She stopped the file. "There's more," she said quietly. The second recording opened. Different timestamp, September 28th, 8:37 p.m., my living room. Lorraine's voice again, but this time on the phone. Speaker mode maybe because the male voice on the other end came through clearly. Deep, southern accent, warm and familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "The notary appointment is set for November 3rd, darling." That drawl. Texas or maybe Louisiana. "Everything's in place." "Good. He's getting worse every day. The confusion is accelerating." "You sure he'll be compliant by then?" "Absolutely. Sterling's been documenting every incident. The town thinks he has early onset Alzheimer's. By November 3rd, he'll sign anything I put in front of him." The male voice chuckled. Not cruel exactly, just satisfied. "That blue couch by the fireplace, real homey setup you got there. Wouldn't mind sitting on it myself when this is done." My breath stopped. Blue couch, by the fireplace, our living room. He'd been inside my house. He knew the layout. He'd stood in my living room and looked at my furniture and planned this with my wife. "He'll be compliant by then," Lorraine said. "The protocol is working faster than Sterling projected. Sometimes I almost feel bad watching him struggle." "Almost," the man laughed. "Almost." Elara stopped the recording. "I need 48 hours to clean the voice signature and identify him," she said. "But he's been inside your house, recently, and he's coordinating the notary appointment." Bernard's hand had moved toward the pause button halfway through the second recording, but I'd shaken my head. I had to hear all of it. Every word, every casual laugh, every piece of evidence that my wife and son were poisoning me while planning to steal everything my family had built for 162 years. Third conspirator, male, southern accent, comfortable enough with Lorraine to call her darlin' and joke about my furniture. "I need to go," I said, standing. "She'll notice if I'm gone too long." "Dad, I'm fine. I need to go home." Bernard unlocked the door. I walked to my truck on legs that felt disconnected from my body, drove back to the farm as darkness fell across Wyoming. Lorraine was in bed when I got home at 9. I stood in the kitchen doorway and stared at the coffee maker. Imagined her at 3:42 in the morning measuring 2 milligrams of something into the grounds, clinical and precise. Walked to the living room, stared at the blue couch by the fireplace, tried to picture the southern accent man standing here looking at my home planning my destruction with the casual comfort of someone who thought he'd already won. Every surface was evidence now. Every meal a potential crime scene. Every kind word from my wife a performance. I went upstairs, lay in bed beside Lorraine, didn't sleep. Watched the ceiling until dawn crept through the curtains and painted everything gray. At 8 o'clock I went out to check the north wheat field like I did most mornings. The October air was cold, the wheat stubble crunching under my boots. My phone rang. "Elara." "Dad, I have the analysis back." I stopped walking. "From Frances. She collected residue samples from your coffee mug 3 days ago while visiting. Sent them to a lab in Cheyenne, I trust. Results came back an hour ago." The wheat stretched out around me golden in the morning sun. Normal, beautiful, my land. "It's a custom cocktail," Elara said. "Anti-anxiety medication, mild sedative, and a memory disruptor. Apex Pharma only manufactures it for institutional clients, hospitals, psychiatric facilities, prisons. Not available to the general public." Silence. 3 seconds of silence while my brain processed what that meant. Then, so I'm not losing my mind. "You never were. They've been poisoning you since mid-August. The dosage has been increasing gradually, that's why the symptoms got worse over time." Relief hit like a flood, then rage, then something colder and sharper clarity. "Can you prove it?" "The lab report documents everything. Chemical signatures, concentration levels, it's evidence." The wheat under my boots, the sky overhead, the phone in my hand, all of it sharpened into focus. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't losing myself, I was being systematically dismantled by people who thought they could get away with it. "Dad, I'm here." "There's more." The southern accent from the recording I ran the cadence pattern through law enforcement databases. Voice analysis software. "There's a match, but you're not going to like where he works." I gripped the phone harder. "Tell me." The name hit like a fist. Dale Pemberton County Clerk's Office Real Estate Division. "Dale Pemberton," Elara said through the phone, her voice tight. "County Clerk's Office Real Estate Division. He processes every property transfer in Johnson County. He's positioned to forge documents, backdate signatures, make fraud look legal." I stood in the north wheat field, morning sun warming my shoulders, phone pressed to my ear. Dale Pemberton. I'd met him maybe twice. Tall man, mid-40s, always wore bolo ties. Shook hands at the county fair. Normal, friendly. a man who'd been inside my living room planning my destruction. Pack a bag, Ilara said. Drive to my apartment in Casper. Tonight. Don't tell anyone. We build the case from there while you're safe. No? Dad. Running makes me look exactly what they're claiming. Demented and paranoid. A confused old man fleeing his own home because he can't tell reality from delusion. They're poisoning you. And if I run, that becomes evidence of mental instability instead of evidence of their crime. I disappear, they claim I wandered off confused file for conservatorship in absentia and take the farm legally while I'm hiding in Casper. Silence on the line. Then, you're staying in the kill zone on purpose. I'm staying in my house. On my land. Until we bury them. The wheat stretched around me, golden and mine. I go home. I act confused. I let them think the drugs are working. And when they make their move November 3rd, we have witnesses and recordings. Ironclad evidence requires I stay in the trap. Ilara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Harder. Colder. My voice. Okay, she said. Then we do this right. Bernard's shop, 11 tonight. Don't tell Lorraine where you're going. The line went dead. At 11 o'clock that night, I told Lorraine I needed to check on a tractor part Bernard was holding for me. Drove into Buffalo under stars so bright they looked like broken glass. Bernard's shop was dark except for a single light in the back office. I knocked. He opened the door, locked it behind me, led me through the quiet building. The office was different than this afternoon. 3 people waited around the metal work table. Ilara stood by the window. Beside her, a man in his early 50s wearing jeans and a work shirt, no uniform, no badge, but I recognized him anyway. Sheriff Brent Travers, 51, had run Johnson County law enforcement for 12 years, with the quiet competence of a man who owed debts and paid them in full. And sitting at the table, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a leather briefcase. Velma Whitfield, 64, was Tobias's aunt and the most feared estate litigation attorney in Wyoming, with silver hair and a briefcase full of prosecutorial precision. I looked at the 3 faces around Bernard's work table and realized I'd been guarded all along. Will, Sheriff Travers said, extending his hand. Been a long time since we talked face to face. We shook. His grip was firm, deliberate. The smartwatch was my insurance policy, he said without preamble. Every morning for 6 weeks, I've watched your biometrics spike when you drink that coffee, logged every anomaly, built a timeline. Velma opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Toxicology report from hair sample analysis. 3-drug cocktail anti-anxiety medication sedative memory disruptor. The drug cocktail is prosecutable as attempted chemical incapacitation under Wyoming Statute 6-2-401. She slid the report across the table. I didn't read it, just stared at the official letterhead. The lab stamps the chemical formulas that proved what my body had been telling me for weeks. We let them execute the notary appointment, Ilara said. Film everything, then arrest them mid-signature with you as protected witness, not victim. How long, I asked. How long have you known? Velma and Ilara exchanged a glance. Before I tell you how long they'd been protecting me without my knowledge, comment. A, if you think 18 months of secret protection is impressive, or B, if you'd be angry they didn't tell you sooner. Add why in 5 to 10 words. Please note some details ahead are recreated for narrative impact, though the core truth remains. Your niece contacted me July 14th, 2023, Velma said quietly. We've had standby protective measures in place for 18 months. The words didn't process immediately. July 2023, 18 months ago. Before my birthday. Before the smartwatch, before I knew anything was wrong. Lorraine made 3 calls to Apex Pharma in August this year, Sheriff Travers added. Corporate sales line asking about custom formulations for institutional clients. I had the DEA flag the account that day, started monitoring. Tobias flagged unusual questions. Lorraine asked about your will last summer, Velma said. Whether a spouse could modify estate documents if the primary holder showed signs of cognitive decline. How conservatorship worked in Wyoming. He told his aunt me. I told Ilara. We started watching. 18 months. They'd been watching my back for 18 months while I thought I was alone. Stanley Riddle's been doing drive-bys 3 times a week since September, Sheriff Travers continued. Glenn Eaton, your cowherd, he's former state investigator. I asked him to take the job when his cover got blown on another case. He's been living in your bunkhouse documenting everything. Glenn, the quiet man who fixed fences and never asked questions. Former state investigator. Bernard traced the smartwatch serial number, Ilara said. MW is Marcus Webb, Sheriff Travers' deputy. He coordinated the water bottle message through Tobias. Marcus Webb. MW. Not some mysterious figure. A deputy sheriff. Francis collected coffee residue samples, Sheriff Travers said. She thinks she's helping document your decline for sympathetic purposes. Doesn't know we're using her samples as evidence against Lorraine. The room felt smaller suddenly, warmer. Too many people who'd been protecting me while I documented everything in a spiral notebook hidden in a feed bag. Sheriff Travers pulled his chair closer, leaned forward. Blizzard of '09, he said quietly. Highway 16. My daughter's car went into the ditch at midnight. You were the one who stopped, pulled her out before hypothermia set in, stayed with her until the ambulance came. I remembered. January 2009, 20-degree night. Young woman, maybe 19, car buried in a snowdrift heater, dead. I'd wrapped her in a moving blanket from my truck, kept her talking until help arrived. You saved my daughter's life, he said. I owe you my life, now we're even. 18 months. They'd been watching for 18 months. Building evidence, coordinating witnesses, protecting me while I thought I was fighting alone. Velma slid a manila folder across the table. Now we discuss November 3rd, she said. The notary appointment, because Dale Pemberton isn't coming alone, he's bringing a witness. Her eyes locked on mine. Your wife scheduled a doctor to certify your mental incapacity on site. Brent Travers looked at me across the table and his voice dropped to something raw. You raised me, Will, he said. The name hit me like a fist. Nobody called me that anymore except the old-timers at the feed store who remembered my father. You don't remember, do you? His jaw worked. 1999. I was 16, aging out of the group home in Casper. You came through doing some cattle auctions, saw me fixing a busted fence on the property, and you just stopped. I stared at him, searching for the memory. A skinny kid, all elbows in defiance, refusing to make eye contact while his hands worked wire like he'd been doing it his whole life. You told the director you needed summer help, Brent continued. Paid them 3 months up front, brought me here. Taught me to ride to rope to fix machinery. You never asked about my past, you just saw me. His voice cracked. I won't let her finish this. You raised me, Will. I won't let her bury you. The memory crystallized a boy who flinched at sudden movements, who slept in the bunkhouse and worked until his hands bled, who left at summer's end with $2,000 cash and a letter of recommendation that got him into the sheriff's academy. I'd forgotten. God help me, I'd forgotten saving him. So, when Velma came to me last July, Brent said, saying you might be in danger, but we needed proof before we moved, I started watching. We all did. 18 months they'd been circling me like guardian angels, and I never knew. That afternoon, I found Paloma Hewitt, 27. Sterling's wife of 3 years, and a soft-spoken elementary teacher who'd married into the Hewitt family, believing she'd found stability standing in the kitchen with her hand pressed to her stomach. The gesture was unconscious protective. She startled when I walked in. Just checking the pantry, she said too quickly. Sterling asked me to grab the rice. But her eyes were red and the prenatal vitamin bottle was barely visible in her cardigan pocket, the pharmacy label still fresh. 6 weeks along the date stamp said. She didn't know I'd seen it when it slipped onto the counter yesterday. She didn't know I'd photographed it. Finn Hewitt, 8 years old and Clarence's grandson through Nora, a quiet boy who loved the farm's barn cats more than people sat at the table drawing pictures of calico kittens with fierce concentration. He didn't look up. How you feeling, Paloma? I asked. Fine, she grabbed the rice. Just tired. She was hiding the pregnancy from Sterling. The question was why. October 3rd, I started performing madness, controlled, calculated, observable madness. Lorraine poured my morning tea with that careful precision she'd perfected, setting it on the table like an offering. I picked it up, walked to the pothos plant on the windowsill, that sprawling green thing that had survived 20 years of neglect, and poured the entire cup into its soil. The liquid soaked in, dark and toxic. What are you doing? Lorraine's voice was sharp. Feeding it, I said. Plants like tea, don't they? Her face went carefully blank. You're supposed to drink that. Not thirsty. I saw the calculation in her eyes. Was this genuine decline, or was I onto her? She couldn't know for certain, and that uncertainty was my weapon. October 4th. I called Finn by the wrong name 3 times. Hey there, Marcus, I said. Want to see the barn cats? Grandpa, I'm Finn. Right, Finn. Sorry, Marcus. Sterling exchanged glances with Lorraine. She touched her phone, probably texting Dale or whoever else was in her network. October 5th, someone asked me a direct question about the fence repair, and I just stared. Let 15 seconds drag out while I blinked slowly as if fighting through fog to find words. The fence, I finally said. Yes, fence needs fixing. More glances, more texts. October 6th, I poured another cup into the pothos, and another on the 7th. By October 7th, the pothos plant's leaves were yellowing at the edges, curling inward like dying hands. The broad green foliage that had dominated the windowsill for 2 decades was turning sickly spotted with brown necrosis. I stood there at dawn, watching the evidence accumulate in chlorophyll failure. The tea was killing it. Whatever Lorraine had been putting in my morning cup was toxic enough to murder a plant that had survived every kind of neglect. I photographed the leaves with my phone close-ups showing the progression of decay and uploaded them to the shared drive Velma had set up. Proof, visible, undeniable proof. Lorraine walked in, saw me staring at the dying plant, and her expression flickered just for a second into something cold and furious before smoothing back to concern. "That old thing finally giving up," she said lightly. "Guess everything dies eventually." "Guess so," I agreed. But we both knew what we were really talking about. Sterling stood at the kitchen counter, scrolling his phone, when Paloma walked in hand, unconsciously touching her still flat stomach. His eyes flicked up. "You look pale," he said. She froze. "Just tired." But I saw it. Sterling's gaze dropping to her hand, then back to her face, cold calculation behind his eyes. He knew, or he was starting to suspect, and whatever he was thinking, it made my blood run cold. Paloma's whisper drifted through the farmhouse hallway from the guest bathroom. 5 more days, Cody, then everything changes." I froze outside the linen closet, towels in hand. October 8th, 6:30 evening, and my daughter-in-law was whispering promises to someone who wasn't her husband. Sterling's cold calculation from that morning suddenly made sense. He suspected something. Her voice dropped lower. "Sterling won't be able to touch me or the baby. I just need to keep quiet until after." The bathroom door opened. I stepped back, arranging towels like I'd been there the whole time. Paloma emerged, phone clutched tight, eyes too bright and hands shaking. "Oh," she said. "I didn't know anyone was, just stocking towels," I said. "Everything okay?" "Just my sister." The lie came too quickly. "Wedding planning stuff." I tilted my head. "Your sister's name is Cody." She went pale. "Nickname, family thing." She brushed past me, protective hand on her stomach, and disappeared down the hallway. I texted Brent, need deep background on Paloma's contacts. Someone named Cody. Urgent. The farmhouse settled into evening quiet, old wood creaking, cattle lowing in the distance, Lorraine's pot roast smell masking poison. 11 p.m. Sterling had left his laptop open on the study desk, Facebook still logged in. Sloppy for someone so paranoid. Paloma's whispered promise, 5 more days, aligned too perfectly with November 3rd. I needed to know whose side she was on. Her messages with someone labeled Cody went back to April. April 15th, installed the router hack like Sterling asked. Your husband's paranoid as hell. The sender's profile showed a lean man in his early 30s, baseball cap, low grinning. Remy Cody Finch, 32, was a freelance IT contractor who'd installed security systems and signal jamming equipment for half the county's paranoid rich, including Sterling Hewitt last spring. May 23rd, can't stop thinking about you. June 10th. Sterling's at the county office all day. Come over. The affair had been going on for months, right under Sterling's nose, facilitated by the man he'd hired to secure his surveillance operation. September 30th. Pregnant. It's yours. October 1st. Paloma's message. When he's arrested, I file for divorce and protective order. 3 kids plus this baby, family court gives me everything. She wasn't protecting herself from Sterling's abuse. She was planning to weaponize his arrest claim he was dangerous and use Wyoming's family court to secure the children, the house, and the Hewitt family trust assets. Everything Sterling thought he was stealing from me, she was going to steal from him. October 7th, Remy's message, 5 days till his November 3rd trap closes. Then you're free and we're set. How many layers of betrayal could one family hold before it collapsed into itself? I stared at the screen. Paloma knew about the conspiracy. She knew about November 3rd, and she was using it for her own escape, an affair baby, a boyfriend who'd helped Sterling build his surveillance network, and a plan to claim everything while Sterling rotted in jail. 12:30 a.m. October 9th. I called Alara from the study. She's been sleeping with the IT guy who helped Sterling bug your house. Alara's voice crackled with disbelief. And she wants him in prison so she can take the children, the trust fund, and disappear with her boyfriend, I said. A long pause. We can use her. She testifies we give her immunity and a divorce lawyer. She's not innocent, I said. Neither are we. Alara's voice was steel. She wants Sterling in prison. So do we. She's willing to testify about the IT setup, the signal jamming, the coordination. That's evidence we can't get any other way. She's stealing from her own children. And Sterling's trying to murder you. Alara's exhale was sharp. I'm not saying she's good dad. I'm saying she's useful, enemy of my enemy, gray ally. When this goes to trial, we need every piece we can get. Ruthless pragmatism overriding judgment. My daughter had learned that from me 40 years of ranch decisions where sentiment got people killed and hard choices kept cattle fed. Talk to Velma, I said. See if she can structure an immunity deal. Paloma gets protection custody, a clean exit. We get her testimony about Remy Finch and the IT contractor connection. Already texting her, Alara said. 5 days, Dad. Keep your head down. October 9th, 10 p.m. The study smelled like old leather and printer ink. I compiled the third evidence notebook, methodical and comprehensive. Complete drug timeline since August, dates, dosages estimated from symptom severity, smartwatch heart rate correlations. Gaslight frequency chart, 47 incidents logged color-coded by witness and severity. Phone call logs between conspirators. Lorraine to Dale Pemberton, Sterling to Remy Finch, timestamps showing coordination. IT contractor connection, Remy Finch's installation receipts, router hack evidence, signal jamming equipment, serial numbers. Photographs, the dying pothos plant, yellowed leaves curling like accusations. I uploaded everything to the encrypted cloud drive, then composed the email. Third notebook attached. New complication, daughter-in-law having affair with IT contractor, wants Sterling jailed to claim assets. Velma's reply came within minutes. Good. Gives us leverage and a cooperative witness. 5 days, stay sharp. 5 days. The number sat in my chest like a countdown timer. I couldn't stop. I leaned back, listening to the farmhouse breathe. October wind rattling windows, furnace kicking on Lorraine's footsteps overhead as she prepared for bed. This place had been in my family for 3 generations. I'd fought drought market crashes and brutal winters to keep it alive. I wasn't going to let them bury me here. October 10th morning, I found Lorraine in the kitchen mixing my coffee with deliberate precision. She smiled at me, that bright, false smile, and slid the mug across the counter. Drink up, honey, she said. You'll need your energy today. The lawyer's coming by this afternoon to discuss our estate planning. I blinked slow and confused. I thought that was the 13th. Change of plans. Her voice was light casual. He had an opening, so I moved it up. 3 days early, they'd moved the timeline. Finn's fishing line went slack in his small hands, and he looked up at me with those serious 8-year-old eyes. Why does Daddy take me to see another grandpa? The fish pond behind the farm stretched quiet under October afternoon, light water smooth as glass. I'd taken Finn out here at 2 o'clock to avoid the estate planning lawyer meeting happening at the house, let Lorraine and Sterling perform their show for the suited man with his papers and pens. Better to be the confused old rancher who forgot about the appointment than sit through another scripted trap. But Finn's question hit me like cold water. What other grandpa buddy? I kept my voice light casual while my pulse kicked up. Finn reeled in his empty line tongue, poking out in concentration. The one in Casper, with the white hair and the big white car. Daddy says he's his real dad. The world tilted. The fishing rod went heavy in my hands. Sterling takes you to visit this man, I asked. Yeah. Finn nodded, resetting his bobber with the careful focus children bring to important tasks. Every few weeks, he has a really big house, bigger than ours. Not my son. The thought came unbidden, sharp as a knife between ribs. Sterling had a biological father I'd never known about. 34 years raising another man's child, and Lorraine had never told me, never even hinted. What does this grandpa look like? I asked. Finn squinted, remembering. Old like you, white hair, blue eyes, he's got a white Cadillac, really shiny. And he always asks about you and the farm, what you're doing, if you're feeling okay, stuff like that. Intelligence gathering through an 8-year-old. Cold, calculated. Are you mad, Grandpa? Finn's voice went small. Mommy said I should always tell you the truth. Paloma, she'd told him to reveal this. But why? I'm not mad at you, buddy. I reached over, squeezed his shoulder. You did the right thing telling me. Always tell me the truth, okay? Finn's face brightened. Okay, can we catch a fish now? Sure thing. But my mind was racing. Sterling had a biological father in Casper. White hair, blue eyes, expensive car, big house asking questions about the farm. A real estate developer, probably. Someone with money. Someone who might be funding this whole conspiracy. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Sterling's willingness to betray the man who'd raised him. The coldness in his eyes. The calculated theft. It all made sense now. He'd never seen me as his father. Just the obstacle standing between him and what his real father wanted, the Hewitt farm, the land, the legacy. 34 years raising another man's son, and I'd never known, never even suspected. The fish weren't biting. We sat in comfortable silence while the sun dropped lower, painting the pond copper and gold. Finn hummed some song from school, swinging his legs off the dock, and I wondered how much damage we were about to do to this innocent kid's world when we tore his family apart. 5 o'clock, we walked back to the farmhouse. The black Mercedes was still in the driveway estate, planning lawyer still inside, probably packing up his briefcase full of unsigned documents. Lorraine would be furious I'd missed the meeting. I sent Finn to wash up for dinner and headed down the hallway toward my study. Paloma's voice drifted from the bathroom low and urgent. I slowed. "You did good today, sweetie," her whisper carried through the half-open door. "Always tell Grandpa Will the truth, just like we practiced." Finn's small voice. "But why can't I tell Daddy I told?" "Because it's our special secret, just you, me, and Grandpa Will." The exit twist landed like a punch to the gut. She'd coached him. Deliberately planted the revelation about Sterling's biological father, using the fishing trip as her stage and an 8-year-old boy as her messenger. Gray ally feeding me evidence while maintaining her innocent wife cover. I stood frozen in the hallway, hand on the study door, listening to water run in the bathroom sink and Paloma's gentle murmurs about washing behind your ears. She was ruthless, strategic, playing both sides with surgical precision. And I was going to let her because we needed the evidence. 5:30, my phone buzzed. Text from Velma. Received 3 photos from P via T. Positive ID on Sterling's biofather. Marcus Gaines, 68, Casper real estate developer. $8 million net worth. Running background now. I pulled up the attached images. First photo, a man with white hair and cold blue eyes standing beside a white Cadillac, face clear and focused. Second photo, the Cadillac's license plate, Wyoming tags number sharp. Third photo, a large house in North Casper address visible on the mailbox. Paloma had documented everything. She'd probably taken these photos weeks ago, waiting for the right moment to deploy them. I texted back, "She used the kid to tell me first. Coached him at the pond." Velma's reply came fast. Ruthless, but useful. Gaines might be funding the conspiracy. Checking financial ties to Dale Pemberton and Lorraine now. Marcus Gaines, Sterling's biological father. $8 million net worth real estate empire, asking questions about my farm through an 8-year-old grandson. The conspiracy suddenly had a face, a name, a financial backer with the resources to fund forgery, bribery, and murder. I sat at my desk studying Marcus Gaines's face on my phone screen. He looked like Sterling, same cold calculation in the eyes, same thin-lipped smile that never reached the warmth. Blood calling to blood across 34 years of lies. The hallway floorboards creaked. Voices from the kitchen, Lorraine's bright fake cheer. Sterling's low rumble, a stranger's professional tone. The lawyer was still here. I pocketed my phone and moved to the window. The estate planning lawyer's black Mercedes was still parked in the driveway. Through the kitchen window I saw Lorraine Sterling and a man in a suit gathered around the table, papers spread, pen in Sterling's hand pointing at signature lines. They'd started without me. The trap was closing 3 days early. She'd used a child, her own stepson, and I was going to let her because we needed the evidence. Alara laid 4 sealed bags on Bernard's work table, hair, cotton swab hair, again coffee cup with lipstick stain. I'd walked past that estate planning meeting the night before without entering. Let them think I'd forgotten. Let them believe the cognitive decline was real. October 11th, 8 a.m. and I stood in Bernard's shop back room while my daughter arranged evidence like a prosecutor building a case. "I've had these since before Finn told you about the Casper grandfather," Alara said. Her voice was steady, clinical. I needed scientific proof. The first bag, dark hair streaked with gray. "Yours, from the barbershop trash, October 7th. The second bag, cotton swab with faint staining. Sterling's, from the farmhouse bathroom, October 8th. I broke in through the mudroom while everyone was at dinner. The third bag, brown hair, younger. Mine. The fourth bag, white paper cup rim, marked with coral lipstick. Coffee cup, Irving Sherwood Casper. I followed him from his real estate office October 7th, waited outside the coffee shop, retrieved this from the trash after he left. And I said, "You followed Sterling's biological father." My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. Got his DNA from a coffee cup. Expedited 23andMe submission. Alara pulled up her phone, showed me the confirmation email. 72 hours, then we know exactly who you're fighting and who's actually yours. The shop smelled like motor oil and old wood, familiar and grounding. Outside Buffalo's main street was quiet Friday morning, most folks at work or heading to the feed store. Bernard had given us his back room without questions, just a nod and a locked door. 3 days, I said. Alara met my eyes. 3 days to find out if the son who's trying to kill you was ever yours at all. October 11th through 13th blurred into a performance of cognitive decline while my mind counted hours. I poured tea into the dying pothos plant, its leaves now brown and curled, evidence of accumulated poison. Responded slowly when Lorraine asked about the missed estate planning meeting, letting confusion cloud my face. stared blankly during dinner conversations while Sterling and Lorraine exchanged meaningful glances. Every hour wondering about those DNA results. Ilara's texts marked time like a countdown. 48 hours. Stay sharp, tomorrow results come to Bernard's shop address. Then 24 hours. Then October 13th night, 6 hours. Tomorrow changes everything. I lay in bed, listening to Lorraine's breathing beside me, this woman who'd shared my life for 40 years, and thought, tomorrow I find out if the son who's trying to kill me was ever mine at all. The waiting was a slow bleed every hour, draining certainty until only questions remained. October 14th, 3 p.m. Bernard's shop, back room again. Ilara's laptop open on the work table 23 and me, results loaded. Her hands shook as she clicked through the interface. Okay, she said quietly. First comparison, Sterling Hewitt versus you. The screen populated with data, genetic markers, percentage matches, relationship probability. The number at the top hit me like a fist. 0% biological relation, Ilara read. Her voice was flat professional, but I heard the tremor underneath. No paternal match, not your son. 34 years, birthday parties and cattle drives and teaching him to ride. Sitting beside his hospital bed when he broke his arm at 12, walking him through college applications. All of it built on a lie Lorraine had maintained every single day. And the Casper man, I asked. Ilara clicked to the second comparison. Sterling Hewitt versus Irving Sherwood, 99.97% paternal match confirmed. She looked up. Sterling's real father. Irving Sherwood, not the man I'd raised as my son, but the man who'd fathered him probably while I was working 16-hour days to keep the ranch alive, probably in my own bed while I was out checking fence lines in winter storms. The entry twist settled into my bones like cold. Sterling had never been mine. Every moment of his childhood, every scraped knee I'd bandaged and bedtime story I'd read, I'd been raising another man's son while that man, Irving Sherwood, real estate developer, white Cadillac, big house in Casper, waited in the shadows. Why? The word came out rough. Why would she do this? I don't know yet. Ilara's fingers hovered over the keyboard. But there's more. She scrolled to a second result page. Her hands were shaking harder now. What the? There's a second result, she whispered. Me and you. The screen loaded. Ilara Hewitt versus Clarence Hewitt. The percentage at the top made my vision swim. 99.99%, I read aloud. Biological match, confirmed paternal relation. Ilara looked at me with tears running down her face. I'm not your niece. I'm your daughter. Birth name Emily before the adoption. My parents, your brother and his wife, they told me when I turned 18. Said I'd been given to them when I was 2 years old. Family arrangement, they called it. I never knew why. The exit twist rewrote everything. The daughter I'd thought was my brother's child, raised across town, seen at Sunday dinners and holidays, always feeling that inexplicable pull toward her. She'd been mine all along. Emily. My Emily. You're mine, I said. My voice broke. You always were. They took you and gave me his son instead. Ilara came around the table. I stood and she wrapped her arms around me, and we held each other, while decades of lies collapsed into one truth. She smelled like her mother's perfume, the woman who'd raised her, but her eyes were mine. I'd seen it all her life and never understood. Dad, she said against my shoulder, the word she'd never called me before. Emily, I said back. 2 results, 2 lives rewritten, and Lorraine had known every truth she'd buried. We stood there in Bernard's back room holding onto each other like drowning people while the laptop screen glowed with scientific proof of what my heart had somehow always known. Ilara wiped her eyes and opened a third file on the laptop. There's more, she said quietly. I ran Lorraine's DNA too from her hairbrush. You need to see who Emily's mother actually is. The family tree diagram loaded on screen and my breath stopped. Remy Finch walked into Sterling's Coldwell Banker office carrying a laptop bag and the confident lie, I'm here about your server issue. That was 2 p.m. October 14th. At that exact moment, 30 miles away in Bernard's shop, the DNA family tree on Ilara's laptop showed Lorraine as Emily's biological mother. My wife had given away her own daughter and raised another man's son in her place. The screen glowed with proof of a deception so complete it had lasted 32 years. But I didn't know about Remy yet. That came later. 2 p.m. Sterling's Coldwell Banker office. Casper. The receptionist, young woman with perfect nails and a phone headset, looked up when Remy walked in. Sterling called about network slowdowns, Remy said, smooth as glass. Said I could access his machine while he's out showing properties. She checked her calendar. He's at a 2 o'clock showing in Riverside. Won't be back until 4. You need me to call him? No need, he's expecting this. I'll be quick. She waved him through. Sterling's private office glass desk leather chair, Montana landscape prints on the walls, desktop computer tower humming quietly beneath the desk. Remy knelt, unplugged the USB drive from the back port. Small black drive no bigger than a thumb containing everything. 4 minutes. That's all it took. Laptop connected files copying in a silent stream, 847 files total. Contracts, emails, spreadsheets, financial projections. The entire conspiracy documented and stored on a drive Sterling thought was safe because it was physically disconnected from the network. Progress, bar 100%. Remy ejected the drive, plugged Sterling's back in exactly where it had been packed up the laptop. Text to Paloma, in and out, 4 minutes, 847 files, copied contracts, emails, spreadsheets. Sending to your contact now. The receptionist smiled when Remy walked past. All fixed. Server's running clean, Remy said. Have a good afternoon. The entry twist was already complete before I knew it existed. Every piece of evidence Sterling thought was hidden now copied and encrypted, already traveling through digital channels toward Alara's secure email. Bernard's shop. 3:30 p.m. Alara and I were still sitting in stunned silence. Lorraine is Emily's mother. Lorraine gave her away. Lorraine raised Irving's son instead when Alara's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Remy got the files, everything from Sterling's office drive. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean by too many revelations in too few hours. Can we handle more truth today? We don't have a choice. Alara opened her laptop, fingers moving fast across the keyboard. The contract's in here, the actual sale agreement. The back room smelled like coffee gone cold, and the metallic tang of stress sweat. Outside, Buffalo's afternoon traffic hummed past Bernard's shop. Ordinary people living ordinary lives while mine disintegrated into lies upon lies. Alara's screen filled with file names, Hewitt_farm_schedule.xls_schedule.xls_thread_March_OCT.msg. Start with the contract, I said. She clicked. The PDF loaded 23 pages, legal language dense as barbed wire, dated November 3rd, 2024. Purchase agreement for Hewitt Farm, 240 acres, seller, Clarence Hewitt buyer, Sherwood Development, LLC, purchase price $11.3 million. I scanned past the property description. The title warranties the closing conditions. Page 4, supplementary clauses. There, I said, pointing. Clause B. Alara read aloud. Consultancy fee $4.7 million payable to L. Hewitt Cayman National Bank Account 7739-4821. $4.7 million. Her price for 34 years of marriage in calculated murder. Lorraine, Alara whispered. Offshore Cayman account. She's taking nearly half the sale price. She's not the accomplice, I said. The clarity hit like ice water. She's the architect. 42% of the farm's value routed to an offshore account in her name. Sterling would get the property, Irving Sherwood would get the development rights, Dale Pemberton would get whatever kickbacks his county clerk position commanded, and Lorraine would get $4.7 million and her freedom. Alara opened the email thread. Messages between Lorraine and Irving Sherwood starting March 8th, 2024. March 8th. Lorraine to Irving. Your son is ready to help acquire the Hewitt property. I've prepared him for the truth about his father. Irving's reply, you're certain he'll cooperate. This is delicate. Lorraine. He's angry. I've made sure of that. 34 years believing Clarence was his father, now learning the truth. He wants what's his by blood. She told Sterling about Irving to turn him against me, I said. Weaponized his identity. Alara scrolled. April 3rd. Apex Pharma contact confirmed. Benzodiazepine supply secured, dosage schedule attached. Symptoms will mimic cognitive decline over 4 to 6 months. May 17th. Dale Pemberton on board. County clerk access gives us document control for the estate transfer. June 24th. Timeline set, November 3rd, 2024. Notary appointment, mental incapacity documentation, conservatorship filing same day. Every piece of the conspiracy, the drugs, the gaslighting, the timeline, the legal manipulation orchestrated by Lorraine. Sterling was just the visible hand, the weapon she'd sharpened with revealed paternity and manufactured rage. The drugs, the gaslighting, the timing, all her, Alara said. Her voice was hollow. Sterling's just the visible hand. The exit twist settled into my bones. My wife of 40 years, the woman who'd slept beside me, cooked my meals, tended my home, was the mastermind behind my murder. She'd recruited Sterling by revealing his true father. She'd coordinated with Irving Sherwood to acquire the land. She'd arranged the pharmaceutical supply. She'd set every trap. And she'd done it all while smiling at me across the breakfast table, pouring poisoned tea with steady hands. How long had she been planning this? Years, decades, since the day she married me. Alara scrolled to the final email in the thread dated October 13th yesterday. Lorraine to Irving Sherwood. Timeline accelerated. Estate lawyer meeting complete. Clarence signed preliminary documents while confused. Final signing November 3rd as planned, but I have backup leverage if needed. The girl doesn't know I'm her mother yet. My hands went cold. She knows, Alara whispered. She knows I'm her daughter, and she's planning to use it as leverage. Lorraine knew, had always known. Had given Emily away at age 2, raised Irving's son instead, and kept the secret for 32 years, not out of shame but as a weapon she could deploy when needed. Backup leverage. Her own daughter reduced to a tactical asset. The conspiracy didn't start with Lorraine. It started with her mother Edna in 1984, 40 years of patience. Alara found it at 6 p.m., still in Bernard's back room, digging through financial records. We'd spent the last hour processing Lorraine's leverage threat against her daughter. Now Alara was tracing money trails, face pale. Clayton Lockwood, she said, CEO of Lockwood Energy. He's Lorraine's half-brother, same mother Edna. I stared at the corporate filing. Clayton Lockwood, 64, energy executive, net worth $200 million. Family tree showed Edna Lockwood as mother to both different fathers, same calculating bloodline. Edna died in 97, I said. She planned this before I even married Lorraine. Alara clicked through geological surveys, energy corridor projections, land assessments. 1984. Your land sits on the projected route for the Thunder Basin Energy Corridor. Natural gas pipelines wind farm access transmission lines. Your 240 acres are the bottleneck. They've been waiting 40 years. The entry twist hit like a landslide. Edna Lockwood had positioned her daughter to marry me in 1985, 1 year after identifying my land as the key parcel. Waited through 40 years of marriage, 3 children, countless dinners and holidays. Waited for me to age, to become vulnerable, to be worth more dead than alive. 3-generation conspiracy to steal $11.3 million and clear the way for energy development worth billions. So Lorraine married me on her mother's orders, I said. Gave away our daughter, raised Irving's son, poisoned my tea, all following a plan her mother drew up when Reagan was president. And Clayton stands to make hundreds of millions once the land is acquired, Alara said. Sherwood Development, LLC is a shell company. Lockwood Energy owns it through 3 layers of holding companies. 40 years, patient as cancer. 8 p.m., tree line 100 meters behind my farmhouse. FBI Special Agent Simone Graves, 39, had worked white-collar conspiracy cases for 12 years and recognized multi-generational land fraud when she saw it. She crouched beside Sheriff Brent Travers, thermal imaging trained on the house body cam recording. I wore the wire they'd fitted under my flannel microphone, cold against my chest transmitter clipped to my belt. We need them to attempt the violence on camera, Simone said into her radio. You drop the weapon the second Sterling provides verbal witness statement, not before. We need his words recorded. Frances is inside knitting, Brent added. She's your alibi and their witness. They think she'll say you attacked first. She knows to stay quiet until we enter. Frances Platt, 76. Sitting in my living room like 1,000 times before, needles clicking, playing her role as innocent neighbor who'd witnessed my supposed violence. I'm ready, I said into the wire. Let them spring it. The October night smelled like frost and dying leaves. Wind rattled through cottonwoods carrying distant cattle sounds. My farmhouse glowed warm against darkness, kitchen lights on smoke from the chimney, picture of peace masking murder. Hours of waiting in the dark, watching the farmhouse lights, knowing violence was coming and choosing to walk into it anyway. Simone handed me the tactical radio. Earpiece in, we'll be listening. The second you're in danger, we move. I walked back toward my house alone, boots crunching frost-brittle grass. 40 years of my life had been theater directed by a dead woman's greed. Tonight I'd let them perform the final act and spring the trap they didn't know existed. 10:45 p.m. Knock on the door. Sharp, urgent, apologetic. I opened it to a young man in his early 20s, clean-cut and nervous, Honda keys in hand. Sorry to bother you folks this late, he said. My Honda died about a mile up. No cell signal out here. Kai Sherwood, 23, was Irving Sherwood's nephew from Denver, recruited as the innocent-looking bait for the knife trap with promises of $50,000. I knew because Paloma had sent photos to Velma 3 days ago, advance warning of every piece they'd move. Lorraine appeared behind me, perfect concerned hostess. Oh, you poor thing. Clarence, get the jumper cables from the shed. I'll make coffee for this poor boy. She touched my elbow, guiding me toward the living room. I saw it immediately, the Wusthof cleaver under the white tablecloth edge blade just visible, positioned where I'd naturally reach if startled. They'd plant it in my hand or claim I grabbed it to attack Kai. Francis would witness me threatening the stranger. Sterling would subdue me. Sheriff called. Cognitive decline and violent episode documented. Except Brent Travers was already sheriff, crouched behind my barn with FBI tactical. "I'll get those cables," I said slowly, confusion clouding my voice. Shambled toward the table. Kai stepped inside, positioned between me and the door exactly as choreographed. Sterling emerged from the kitchen phone, ready. My hand touched the tablecloth. Lorraine's breathing quickened. Francis's knitting needles stopped. The farmhouse held its breath. I pulled the tablecloth. The cleaver slid into view. Sterling moved fast, pressing it into my hand with both of his, wrapping my fingers around the handle, forcing my grip while pretending to restrain me. "Dad, drop the knife," Sterling shouted loud enough for Francis to hear. "Francis, call 911, he's threatening us." I held the cleaver, looked at Francis frozen with her knitting, looked at Lorraine's calculating eyes, looked at Kai's rehearsed fear. Then I dropped it. The blade clattered on hardwood. "I've been watching all of you for weeks," I said clearly into the wire. "Every lie, every drug, every plan. The exit twist executed perfectly. I'd played into their trap deliberately. Let Sterling force the weapon into my hand, let him shout the false witness statement, all recorded on body cam and wire. Brent Travers and Simone Graves crashed through the front and back doors simultaneously, FBI tactical flooding behind them, cameras rolling. "Sheriff's Department and FBI," Brent announced. "Nobody move. This entire interaction is on body cam and wire recording." Lorraine's face went white. Sterling's hands dropped. Kai backed against the wall. 40 years. They'd waited 40 years and lost it all in 40 seconds. Simone Graves pulled Lorraine's hands behind her back for cuffing when Lorraine smiled, actually smiled and looked straight at me. "You think you won," she said quietly. "But Emily's still mine. She just doesn't know it yet." The FBI agent froze. My blood went cold. Sheriff Brent Travers pulled the Miranda card from his jacket and started reading while Lorraine's wrists clicked into handcuffs. Her threat about Emily still hung in the air, that smile, that quiet certainty, but the law moved forward with its own rhythm. Professional procedure overriding personal rage. Simone Graves pulled Sterling's hands behind his back, next metal cuffs locking with the same decisive click. "You have the right to remain silent," Brent read. His voice was steady, practiced. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." Lorraine's face stayed blank. Sterling's hands shook. Simone stepped forward, FBI credentials held up. "FBI investigation into Lockwood Energy Corporation and associated land acquisition fraud. This property is evidence in a federal case. We have authorization for full search and seizure. Your cooperation is noted but not required." "I want my attorney," Lorraine said. The first words she'd spoken since the arrest. Calm, controlled, like she'd planned for this moment too. Sterling looked at her, then at me. His mouth opened closed. No words came out. Two FBI agents led them towards separate vehicles parked in my driveway. Lorraine to one, Sterling to another. Standard procedure for co-conspirators. Keep them separated, prevent coordination. The vehicles' red and blue lights painted the farmhouse in alternating colors, turning 40 years of memories into a crime scene. Frances Platt stood in the corner, knitting, abandoned in her lap, witness to the whole performance. She caught my eye and nodded once, silent confirmation that justice was moving finally after months of patient waiting. October 15th, 3 a.m. The FBI search team had been working through my farmhouse for 4 hours. I sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee that tasted like ash, watching strangers photograph and catalog my life. Simone Graves emerged from behind the kitchen bookshelf, massive oak unit that had stood there since 1987. She held a small metal safe door, hanging open, key still dangling from the lock. "Found it bolted behind the bookshelf," she said. "Key was on a necklace in Lorraine's jewelry box. Want to see what she kept hidden?" She laid 3 items on the table. First, a passport, Lorraine's maiden name Lockwood. Second, offshore bank account statements, Cayman National current balance showing wire transfers dating back to 2019. Third, a Polaroid photograph, edges worn from handling, colors faded, but image clear. The entry twist hit me like a physical blow. Lorraine younger, maybe 28, holding a newborn baby wrapped in blue hospital blankets. Beside her, Irving Sherwood, unmistakable with that sharp face and cold eyes, hand on her shoulder, both of them smiling. Background showed Houston Methodist Hospital signage. Date stamp, March 1994. Caption in Lorraine's handwriting along the bottom white border, "Our son, forever ours, L. March 1994. Houston Methodist Hospital, March 1994. Simone said quietly. Irving Sherwood, Lorraine, and the infant. She kept it, I said. My voice sounded hollow. 30 years she kept proof of the lie. Brent Travers leaned over my shoulder studying the photograph. Evidence bag. This is premeditation documented in real time. The Polaroid was a time capsule of lies, 1994, Houston sunshine, preserving the moment they decided to destroy me. Sterling, born in Texas, while I believed he was mine, born in Wyoming while I was out checking cattle in a March snowstorm. Every detail of his birth story had been fabricated. The hospital, the complications, Lorraine described the midnight drive through a blizzard, all fiction. She'd kept the photograph like a trophy, hidden behind the bookshelf, locked in a safe, worn at the edges from being taken out and remembered. Our son, forever ours. Not mine, never mine. October 25th, 2 p.m., 11 days after the arrests. Johnson County Sheriff's interrogation room smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the metal table bolted to the floor. I'd requested permission to confront Sterling before his arraignment. Simone and the federal prosecutor had agreed sometimes confessions came from family confrontations and they wanted everything on record. Sterling sat across from me, an Orange County jumpsuit public defender, beside him young lawyer who looked barely 30, already overwhelmed. I placed the DNA envelope and the 1994 Polaroid side by side on the table between us. Physical evidence of 34 years of lies. Sterling stared at the photograph, his face drained of color. Silence stretched. The wall clock ticked. Water dripped somewhere down the hall. Brent Travers stood by the door, arms crossed, watching. I raised you, I said finally. My voice was ice. 34 years. I want to hear you explain why. Sterling's eyes stayed locked on the Polaroid, him, as a newborn wrapped in Houston hospital blankets held by parents who weren't the ones he'd called mom and dad. You wouldn't understand, he said. Try me. His jaw worked, hands clenched on the metal table. The public defender touched his arm, warning caution lawyer's instinct to stop talking, but Sterling shook him off. I called you dad for 30 years because mom told me to. The words exploded out sharp and bitter. Every birthday, every Christmas, every goddamn baseball game and graduation and family dinner, all performance, she told me when I was 16. Sat me down, showed me this exact photograph, said Irving Sherwood was my real father. Wealthy, connected, could give me everything you never could. The exit twist landed, he'd known. At 16, he'd learned the truth and chosen consciously, deliberately to continue the lie for 18 more years. Irving promised me half his estate if I helped get the farm, Sterling continued, voice rising. Mom said you stole her life, trapped her in this nowhere ranch when she could have had money and status. We were just taking what we deserved. I stood slowly, looked at this man I'd taught to ride and rope and fix machinery. This man I'd sat beside in emergency rooms and school conferences and county fairs. 30 years of dad, every word a calculated performance, every hug a transaction. You were 16, I said quietly, turning my back on him. You had 18 years to tell me the truth. You chose this. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Sterling started shouting justifications, accusations, rage, but I didn't stop, didn't turn around, just kept walking while Brent Travers fell into step beside me. Down the sheriff's hallway, Brent caught my arm. Wait. Lorraine's attorney delivered this an hour ago. She'll only speak to one person. He handed me a sealed envelope. I opened it. Inside, a single line in Lorraine's handwriting. Tell Emily I'm ready to meet my daughter. She deserves to know her real mother before I go to prison. I watched Lorraine through the two-way mirror while she cried into her hands, but not I realized from remorse. The note demanding to meet Emily still sat in my truck unanswered. I'd come straight from the interrogation room where Sterling confessed to the observation room where his mother performed her own version of truth. Sheriff Brent Travers stood beside me in the darkened space, arms crossed, watching the woman who'd poisoned my tea for months now sob into FBI custody. Agent Simone Graves sat across the metal table from Lorraine, file folders spread between them, recording light blinking red. Professional, patient, waiting for the breakdown. Where is Irving Sherwood right now, Mrs. Hewitt? Simone asked. Lorraine's hands shook. Makeup ran in black streaks down her face, mascara mixing with tears. I don't know. He stopped answering my calls 3 days ago. 3 days ago would be October 22nd, the day after we executed the search warrant on his Casper residence. He's gone, Lorraine said. Her voice cracked. Fled. Left me here to face this alone. Brent leaned close to me, voice quiet. She's not crying because she's sorry. She's crying because he left her. I watched Lorraine's shoulders shake, listened to her gasping sobs. 40 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her cry like this, not when her mother died, not at Sterling's high school graduation, not even at our supposed anniversary dinners. But Irving Sherwood abandoning her broke something no arrest could touch. This wasn't guilt, this was abandonment, fury, desperation. Simone slid a photograph across the table, the 1994 Polaroid from the hidden safe. Lorraine stared at it, her younger self, holding newborn Sterling Irving's hand on her shoulder, Houston's sunshine and hospital blankets. "Tell me about this photograph, Mrs. Hewitt." Lorraine's crying stopped. Her face went cold, calculating. Then something shifted, dam-breaking 40 years of secrets flooding out. "I gave up everything for that man, and he's going to leave me to rot while he flees to Cabo." The words exploded out sharp with betrayal. 40 years I waited. 40 years I played the rancher's wife while Irving built his empire, and now he won't even take my calls. The entry twist hit me like ice water. She'd loved him the entire time. Every anniversary dinner, every shared bed, every morning coffee theater, cover operation, tactical deception spanning 4 decades. Simone's voice stayed level. "So your marriage to Clarence Hewitt was always part of the land acquisition strategy?" "My mother arranged it," Lorraine said. Tears gone now, replaced by bitter clarity. 1984, she identified the Hewitt property as critical for the Thunder Basin corridor. Irving and I were already together, college sweethearts planning our future. But we needed the land. So I married Clarence in 85, had Irving's baby in 94, and waited. 40 years. 40 years of breakfast conversations and shared silence, and she'd loved someone else the entire time. "We were supposed to be together after this," Lorraine continued. "Sell the farm, split the money, disappear to Mexico, but he's gone. Ran the second you started closing in, left me here alone." Brent touched my shoulder. "You've heard enough." I nodded. Couldn't speak. Just turned and walked out of the observation room while Lorraine's voice echoed through the speaker. 40 years for nothing, 40 years and he left me. November through January, the federal trial proceeded in Cheyenne. I sat in the gallery most days watching prosecutors build the case piece by piece. Wire transfers, email threads, recorded phone calls. The 1994 Polaroid entered as Exhibit 47. Sterling's confession played on courtroom speakers. But the evidence that sealed it came from my kitchen windowsill. Agent Simone Graves took the stand in December holding an evidence bag containing the dying pothos plant, brown leaves, yellowed stems, roots caked in soil. The pothos plant roots contained lethal concentrations of the same psychiatric cocktail found in Mr. Hewitt's hair and blood samples. Simone testified. Benzodiazepine, amitriptyline, and diphenhydramine. 5 days of poison tea poured into soil became concentrated residue that perfectly matched the defendant's Apex Pharma prescription records. The exit twist executed in botanical evidence. I'd poured the poison into that plant for 5 mornings, documenting my supposed cognitive decline, never thinking it would save me in federal court. The roots had absorbed everything, chemical proof of attempted murder preserved in chlorophyll and soil. After her testimony, I found Velma Whitfield in the courthouse hallway. "I poured the poison into that plant for 5 mornings, never thought it would save me in court." She smiled grimly. "Sometimes the smallest decisions carry the most weight." That plant became Exhibit 83. Prosecution's closing argument centered on it. The trial revealed the full scope. Dr. Howard Nichols, 61, had run a private psychiatric practice in Casper for 28 years before prescribing custom drug cocktails for cash to conspirators like Lorraine Hewitt. Attorney Vernon Newell, 57, had spent 30 years drafting real estate contracts before crossing into fraud by preparing falsified estate documents for the Hewitt Farm conspiracy. Clayton Lockwood, 52, CEO of Lockwood Energy, and Lorraine's half-brother sat stone-faced at the defense table in his $1,000 suit facing 30 years for wire fraud and conspiracy. All of them connected, all of them complicit. February 2025. Federal Courthouse, Cheyenne. Sentencing day. The courtroom smelled like old wood and recycled air, felt like the weight of justice delayed. Irving Sherwood, 68, appeared in orange jumpsuit looking 20 years older than his Casper real estate mogul photographs, the white Cadillac man reduced to federal prisoner number. They'd caught him at the Cabo airport 3 days after Lorraine's interrogation, extradited him back to face charges. The judge read from prepared remarks, voice flat and final. Irving Sherwood, 25 years federal imprisonment plus $11.3 million restitution to Clarence Hewitt. Irving's face stayed blank, no reaction. Lorraine Hewitt, 18 years. Sterling Hewitt, 22 years. Clayton Lockwood, 30 years. Dr. Howard Nichols, 7 years medical license revoked permanently. Vernon Newell, 12 years law license revoked permanently. Numbers, years, lives measured in federal sentencing guidelines. I sat in the gallery watching justice delivered, legally satisfied, emotionally hollow, Justice delivered, family destroyed, farm saved, life empty. They were going to prison, all of them, and I felt nothing. Outside the courthouse, February wind cut through my coat. Velma handed me a thick envelope. The farm is yours free and clear. Restitution will come from Irving's seized assets. She paused. There's one more thing. Emily called my office this morning. She knows about Lorraine. She wants to meet you as her father tomorrow at the farm. The cowherd removed his Stetson in the spring dawn light and said the words that changed everything. You were never alone, Mr. Hewitt. May 2025. 4 months since sentencing. 3 months since Alara had arrived at the farm to meet me not as niece, but as daughter. The conversation had lasted 6 hours, tears and truth mingling with Wyoming wind, and when she left that first night she'd called me Dad. Simple word, changed everything. Now Glenn Eaton stood in the north pasture hat in weathered hands, dawn painting the bighorns gold behind him. He'd worked my cattle for 3 years, quiet, competent, asking nothing. I'd trusted him with the herd the way you trust Wyoming weather, inevitable, reliable part of the landscape. You were never alone, Mr. Hewitt. Retired state undercover 23 years. Sheriff reactivated me in 2022. Glenn Eaton, 67, had worked as my quiet cowherd for 3 years, but before that he'd spent 23 years as a Wyoming state undercover officer specializing in rural organized crime. The entry twist settled over me like morning frost. Every day he'd checked fence lines and rotated cattle he'd been watching. Protecting. Your father and I worked cattle rustling in '92, Glenn continued. Broke up a ring operating from Sheridan to Laramie. When Sheriff Travers called about your wife's suspicious pharmacy inquiries, I came back. Figured I owed your family. The birthday text, September 1st, 11:47 p.m. Be careful. That was you, I said. Glenn nodded. Saw Lorraine at the Apex Pharma distributor in Casper. Wrong medications for ranch life, right medications for chemical restraint. Called Travers, he called me. I took the cowherd job the next week. 3 years. He'd been guardian, hidden in plain sight, watching over me while I thought I was alone. Thank you, I said. The words felt inadequate. Your father saved my life in '93, Glenn said simply. Shootout with rustlers near Buffalo. Took a bullet meant for me. I told him then I'd pay it back. He put his Stetson back on. Cattle look good. You breed them right. He walked back toward the barn like nothing had changed, but everything had. June 2025. Velma's phone call came at noon, professional and pointed. Lockwood Energy Liquidation trustees made a final offer, $18.5 million for the farm. Clean sale, no complications, fresh start money. I sat in the study where I'd compiled evidence notebooks, where I'd discovered my daughter's DNA results, where 40 years of lies had unraveled into truth. $18.5 million. The price of freedom. But freedom wasn't for sale when it was already mine. My grandfather's grandfather broke this land, I said. It stays Hewitt. I'll draft the refusal, Velma said. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Alara arrived that evening, 4 months pregnant now, belly just starting to show. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Lorraine had poured poisoned tea, where Sterling had planned my murder. I considered replacing it, then decided against it. The table wasn't guilty, just wood and memory. Velma said you refused $18 million, Alara said. You're giving me a heritage, not a price tag, I said. This land passes to you and your daughter. That's worth more than any number. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Dad, she said, still getting used to the word, same as me. Thank you. July 2025. The knock came mid-morning. Young man on my porch, nervous hands clutching a leather-bound book. Mr. Hewitt, I'm Dashiell Poole, Edna's grandson through her youngest daughter. Dashiell Poole, 32, was a Denver history teacher who'd found his grandmother's diary while cleaning out her storage unit after she died in 1997. Grandmother Edna's diary, he said, handing me the book. 1965 to 1997. I thought you should see it before I decide what to do with it. I opened to the first page. Edna's handwriting precise and bitter. June 1965. The bank took everything today. The land families Hewitt, Morris, and Caldwell bought our assets for pennies while we lost generations of work. I will restore our family name through my daughter's marriages. They will marry into the families that destroyed us and take back what was stolen. The exit twist unfolded across 50 years of entries. Edna had positioned all 3 daughters like chess pieces. Lorraine married me. Another daughter married into Lockwood Energy. The third into Morrison Cattle Company. Multi-generational vendetta born from 1965 bankruptcy and shame. Alara read over my shoulder, hand on her pregnant belly. 60 years of revenge, she whispered. 3 daughters sacrificed to their mother's bitterness. I carried the diary to the living room fireplace, struck a match, watched Edna's careful handwriting curl and blacken and turn to ash. "Cycle broken," I said. Dashiell nodded. "That's what I hoped you'd do." September 2025. Sunset painted the porch gold and amber. Alara sat beside me in the rocking chair, 7 months pregnant now, hands resting on her belly. "She kicks when the wind picks up," Alara said. "Your granddaughter knows this land already." Across the yard, Finn chased chickens with pure 8-year-old joy, laughing when they scattered. Paloma had left him with his other grandparents while she disappeared into witness protection. The boy visited weekends now called me Grandpa Will without the weight of conspiracy behind it. "Grandpa Will," Finn shouted, running past. "The chickens remember me." I watched him run pure and innocent and free from the lies that had poisoned his father. Sterling would serve 22 years, Lorraine 18, Irving 25. But Finn would grow up knowing truth, and that was worth more than revenge. "Sometimes the most dangerous person sits at your dinner table," I said quietly. "But sometimes salvation is the daughter you didn't know you had, the grandson who tells truth, the cowherd who's actually guardian, and the land your ancestors trusted to your hands." The land endured, the family endured, and that I thought was victory enough. Alara reached into her jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope, handed it to me. "One last thing. Paloma's attorney sent this yesterday. She testified against Sterling and Remy got immunity and witness protection. She wanted you to have this before she disappeared." Inside a photo of Paloma's newborn daughter, tiny and perfect, wrapped in hospital blankets. And a note in careful handwriting named her Grace. "Thank you for letting me save myself. P." And to you listening to my story, remember this. The people closest to you aren't always who they seem to be. For 40 years, I trusted without questioning. I saw what I wanted to see. A loving wife, a devoted son, a family built on solid ground. Family betrayal doesn't announce itself. It hides behind familiar faces and daily routines. Don't make my mistake. Pay attention to the details. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound because it violates the most sacred trust. When those who should protect you plot against you, it shakes everything. But here's what I learned. Family betrayal doesn't define you, how you respond does. I believe God allowed me to discover the truth when I was strong enough to face it. The smartwatch, the warnings, the quiet guardians. None of that was coincidence. Even in the darkest moments, there were angels I never knew I had. The land endured. My real daughter found her way back. That's grace. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, stories about justice, survival, and hard-won truth, please subscribe to Revenge Dad. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. This story contains fictionalized elements for storytelling purposes, but the lessons are real. May you never face such betrayal. But if you do, may you find the strength and support to survive it.